just, you know, it just hit like a hammer. It's like, I got on the plane coming back. I felt fine when I got on the plane. By the time I got off the plane, it was like,
Three, two, one.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the second and final group of election forums, or fora, however you want to go with plurals. We're going to be talking tonight, or we'll be hearing tonight from our candidates for the seats Ward 1 and Ward 3 for the next term of the Tacoma Park City Council. My name is Eric Bond, and I'll be moderating tonight. I come here representing WOWDLP, your hometown homegrown radio station, 94.3 FM, transmitting 20 watts of goodwill, by the way. Tonight, we are starting with Ward 1, candidates Jessica Landman and Shayna Fulcher. Let me ask you a question. Is it okay if I use your first names? Is that all right? Okay, I got a little hung up last week. Okay, and just to be aware, we have limited time, so I apologize that we can't dig in more. I see that there are all kinds of other ways that you can get information about the candidates. There are some questionnaires out there in the community, so please, listeners, viewers, be informed, go to websites, seek out those questionnaires, learn about the issues, and make your choice for the election. Reminder that our election, like the national election, is on November 5th. However, you should be getting ballots in the mail in the next week or so. You have a chance to mail in the ballot. It must be postmarked by November 5th. There must be a postmark on it. And honestly, if I were you, I would get it in early rather than later. Also, here in the community center and at the recreation center on New Hampshire Avenue, there are ballot drops. So when you have your ballot, you can drop it here, you can drop it there. A reminder that every resident of the city, regardless if you're over the age of if you're 16 and older, you can vote in this election. So if you're unsure about whether or not you're registered, check in with the city clerk, go to the City of Tacoma Park website and check out the election information so that you have a chance to vote for your representative on the city council. Let's see. I will be asking fairly generic questions tonight, just as I did last week. There are other forums in the future, in the past, where I may get a little bit more into specific issues, but we have limited time, so I'll be asking each candidate the same question on some of the what I see as the high-level issues for the city of Tacoma Park. I am not wearing my WOWD hat like I was last week. I wear several hats. I was actually asked by a community member ahead of this forum to provide information about my affiliations, so I'll do that. I am funded by an international NGO that focuses on pediatric HIV, and I also am a freelancer with the city of Tacoma Park. I edit the newsletter. Neither of those roles are relevant tonight to my purpose in being here. Over the years, I may start to make a little list. I'll be quick. I'm a longtime member of the TPSS Food Co-op, probably about 1988. I was on the board of the Tacoma Foundation and for many years was the president. I'm the founder of the Azalea Awards. I edited this newspaper for a while. In the 90s, I was on a committee called the Last Tacoma Junction Committee. And at one point, I was a judge for the 4th of July parade. So other than that, I can't really, there's probably something else in my past that I can't recall. So that's a little bit about me, but you're not here to listen about me, you're here to listen to the candidates. So the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna start with opening statements. Each of you will have 3 minutes for an opening statement. whoever I pick for the first opening statement will then also give the first closing statement, so that whoever is picked second will have a chance to give the final word. So I'm trying to be fair there. Generally for the questions, I'll be asking you to respond within 3 minutes. I'm not going to be fact checking you, so it's kind of on you guys to fact check each other to the extent that you want to. All right, I'm talking too much. Let's get going. I don't know. Let's see. Jessica, can you go first and introduce yourself?
Thanks very much, Eric, and thank you for hosting tonight. Now that I heard your list of your accomplishments, I wonder why you're not running for office. My name is Jessica Landman, and I am glad to have this opportunity to run for City Council for Ward 1. The ward and the city both face a lot of challenges right now. Some of them might have significant impacts on our quality of life and our city going forward. Some of those challenges come from Mother Nature, and some of them come from decisions that have been made and policies that have been arrived at by our local government, our county government, and beyond. Just to name a few of them, setting a budget that makes sense, a prudent budget for our city, is a challenge every time, and tax change decisions that are being made that could affect our tax bills and the affordability of our city going forward. That's one thing, to keep our city affordable. That's a challenge. Planning decisions that are going to affect the type of town that we are, our ability to remain diverse, to keep traffic within manageable bounds, and to make the most of the Purple Line going forward when it finally opens. That's a challenge. Land use changes that are coming that could affect everything from traffic and flooding and stormwater management to how we are going to populate our schools and how we are going to continue to make welcome those who live here for whom income is a continuing challenge. We are also experiencing right now some crime that's affecting local businesses and residents, and that is always a challenge. So I believe that Ward 1 would benefit from somebody like me to serve as a city council member. I feel that I'm ready at this point in the stage of my career and the life of my family to make it a priority to focus on the city council and to be able to focus on keeping residents of Ward 1 in the loop and informed about all of these important things that are happening in our community, especially here with our local government. I think that it would be helpful to have somebody like me in this position who has a lot of years of experience working on both environmental issues and government issues. Having served for a number of decades, I'm embarrassed to say how many, as a professional environmental lawyer with experience focusing actually on water quality and stormwater management, both in the government and mostly in the private sector in my career, I believe that I have the necessary background and skills to be a very good contributor to our city council. I also have a lot of experience forming and leading coalitions both within the environmental sector and across sectors, including business, industry, and citizens, to make positive change happen in a lot of different settings. So I believe that this would be a perfect opportunity for me to serve the city, which I love. This would be a labor of love for me, and I'm looking forward very much to the opportunity to serve and to this forum. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Wow, perfect. Perfect 3 minutes. Shayna.
Thank you. I am currently a 15-year Tacoma Park resident. I worked at Mark's Kitchen during the 5 years that I lived here in the 2000s. I remember waiting on a lot of my constituents and even some of our elected officials. My family of 2 children lived on Maple next door to my mom for 5 years until we welcomed our 3rd child and wanted a bigger space. In 2014, we bought our home on Cedar Avenue and have lived there ever since. Before having my first daughter, I worked at FEMA and left the workforce due to childcare costs. When my daughter wanted to join Girl Scouts, I was all too easily persuaded to be her troop leader by community extraordinaire Joe Hoagie. I went from 1 troop to 2 troops to the leader of the leaders of Tacoma Park Silver Spring area. I co-direct a Girl Scout day camp and educate other Girl Scout leaders on taking their troops to do tomahawk throwing, pole archery, and go camping. I am grateful that my adult leadership skills were honed through a female empowerment program. I am often complimented on my listening skills and my ability to lift others. When my youngest child was starting at Tacoma Park Elementary School, I was ready to shift my focus from volunteering at Girl Scouts to city issues. In 10th grade at Montgomery County's Paint Branch High School, I took national, state, and local government, and especially enjoyed the local government education. I took a similar class and attended Montgomery County Council meetings while attending Montgomery Community College, which at the time included Isaiah Leggett as a council member. We were visited by a county judge, newscaster I.J. Hudson, and others in the local politics arena. I knew I was going to come back to it one day, and no longer having kids at home during the day was the right time for me and my family. Now, as serving part of the Tacoma Park City Council, I have enjoyed the wide variation in the work. I have enjoyed the late hours of camaraderie, looking for compromise and consensus on resolutions. I have recently ran and was elected to the Maryland Municipal League Montgomery County Chapter Board in order to continue to move forward with the tax duplication work that our city supported in cooperation with other municipalities. I also specifically requested and was placed on the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments Transportation Planning Board, which is responsible for the region's comprehensive long-range plan through which we receive federal government funds for state and local projects. I appreciate working with groups from outside of our city for innovative ideas of what we can be doing better. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. So for the first question, and there's some issues that both of you are aware that we're going to get to, but I want to ask each of you to address what you see as the biggest challenge specifically for Ward 1. So council member obviously is overseeing the entire city in a sense, but you are elected to represent Ward 1. So we'll start with you, Shayna. What do you see as the challenges that the next council member will face when it comes to Ward 1, and how will you address those challenges?
Sure. I would say diversity has been on the decline for decades throughout our whole city, with land values increasing throughout the U.S. And in this community, we are already very expensive. We will continue to see increases in prices in single-family homes in Ward 1 and a decrease to the almost non-existent middle class. I think that we should continue to explore ways that Ward 1 can be a part of the housing supply solution through possible density increases, especially with our proximity to Metro. We also have an aging population. Seniors are the quickest growing population of food insecure Americans. We have been working with Delegate Charkoudian to enact state legislation for senior low-income residents that would change eligibilities for state taxes for low-income residents. It didn't pass this year, but we're going to keep on working on it, as bills don't often pass the first time. I'm in favor of providing some middle home ownership opportunities for the middle class that are either rising into being middle class because they are low income and they're becoming higher wage earners, or as a senior who's coming down and not earning as much as they used to be. We need more opportunities for middle income home ownership for everybody.
Thank you very much. Jessica, same question.
The issues that are specific to Ward 1, it's hard to separate Ward 1 from its neighbors because we're so much affected by those surrounding us. And I agree with Shayna about the importance of addressing the need to keep existing housing as affordable as possible and to make opportunities for new people to join us in Ward 1. That's a citywide challenge, and Ward 1 is particularly challenging in that regard because it's mostly comprised of single-family homes. And so it's going to take creativity and flexibility on the part of city government and creativity on the part of residents to figure out how to do that while at the same time enabling us to preserve the wonderful qualities of Ward 1, such as the way in which single-family houses mix so seamlessly with multifamily housing. I think a key challenge for Ward 1 as well is that we have many residents, as Shayna mentioned, who are aging in place and very much want to stay here. And as the cost of taxes for single-family houses continues to rise and people are on fixed incomes, that's a significant challenge for people to remain. So it's critical that the people who are formulating our city budget figure out how to be as prudent as possible, since in an unusual fashion in the city of Tacoma Park, an inordinate amount of the tax burden falls on single-family homeowners because we have a relatively limited commercial and manufacturing tax base to contribute to that tax base. So that's why we need to have residents all over the city try and figure out how to deal with that problem. And so finally, I'd say another key challenge for Ward 1 is that it directly abuts the city of of DC, and we have had relatively little collaboration, as far as I can tell, in arriving at how we're going to solve some of the key traffic problems that plague Ward 1 as well as the rest of the city, as well as questions of how development on both sides of the border can harmonize. As a great deal of new construction has happened on the DC side of the line, which are lots of new housing units that we welcome, we still have to struggle to make sure that the two adjacent communities are dealing with that. And of course, the same is true for our other neighbors on other parts of the border of the city.
Great, thank you. Both of you will have a minute for any clarifying comments or additions that you would like to make. Shayna?
Yeah, I mean, I would just add that a lot of the traffic issues are difficult to address because when we're dealing with SHA and we're comparing Ward 1 experiencing more traffic comparing to actual fatalities over in Ward 6, SHA is going to be more concerned about addressing those than the throughput that Ward 1 is able to handle. And it's the same thing in Washington, D.C. Since we started monitoring fatalities from car crashes for pedestrians, and I'm blanking on what year that was, we are right back to where we started, if not worse. And so getting people to pay attention to our traffic issues are hard when you compare them to other areas. And I do agree that our single-family homes are carrying a lot of the tax burden. That is in large part because we have rent stabilization, which I am currently in favor of. And it does depress the values of houses of apartments, multifamily buildings that we're able
Thank
to
you.
collect.
Jessica?
That's an interesting point about the challenges of dealing with traffic in a city this small when we have state highways that pass through here. And SHA is a continuing challenge to work with. And sometimes you succeed and sometimes you fail in making your point with them. I think that Shana raises a good point about the need to address pedestrian safety as a critical issue as well as automobile safety. I served on a county task force on implementing Vision Zero and focusing on equity and inclusion in doing so. And that really highlighted that some of the most important traffic corridors that need addressing are the ones that like along New Hampshire Avenue, where you have lots of lanes of traffic, high speed at times, and not sufficient addressing of that issue in the past has been something that the county is moving to address. And I support Tacoma Park focusing on that issue as well.
Thank you. And Shane, if you care to, you can make any final thoughts.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Jessica? Okay.
I'm fine.
All right. We're going to move on to housing. So I have a generic question. We may have a couple of follow-ups, but let's just start with the basic question. The City of Tacoma Park, a previous council passed a housing and community development strategic plan. And the goal in terms of housing is to ensure that a range of safe, high quality, affordable, and stable housing options are available, are equitably available in neighborhoods throughout the community. The three main goals in terms of housing is preserving existing affordable housing, produce more housing opportunities, and protect renters. So we'll start with you, Jessica, but first of all, do you agree with the goals set forth in the strategic plan? And how do you think that we move forward to enact or to make sure that the city is following this plan?
Thank you, Eric. Yes, those three goals, preserve, protect, and produce housing, I think are still the right combination of ingredients. And that strategic plan's a few years old, but those are still good guiding principles. I think that we have a number of different challenges, and we also have a number of different opportunities to address them. First of all, we have had a relatively stable amount of housing units in the city for quite some time, and in large measure that's because this is a close-in suburb that's been built out almost all over the place. For the first time now in quite some time, with the departure of the hospital on what I'll call Hospital Hill, because that's what the real estate agents are going to name it when they eventually get around to paying attention to it, we have a new piece of real estate that gives us an opportunity to really increase housing in a space where we so far have not had that opportunity. And I think that that presents the city with a lot of opportunities to have new residents come in and to adopt really effective live, work, retail combinations of ingredients in that area that would really be welcome to that neighborhood and to the city. At the same time, we have a lot of naturally occurring affordable housing here, rental units that have become naturally occurring affordable units because they've aged, and therefore their rents, and they're less, less sort of luxurious, and their rents are relatively low. Combined with rent stabilization here, we have an extremely valuable resource there, and I support the city's effort to focus on the rehabilitation of those buildings and to retrofit them for energy efficiency so that we can meet the mutual goals of retaining naturally occurring affordable housing and upgrading it and updating it in a way that will enable it to have a longer life. We also have the opportunity to make use of accessory dwelling units and other measures that would enable people to turn what are now single-family houses into both sources of income that can support people, especially if they are on fixed incomes, and as well to provide additional units of housing for people to live in that tend to be maybe smaller and starter places, but a way to have a foothold in Tacoma Park. It's critical from my point of view that we take steps that preserve affordable housing so that the many kids who are growing up right here in this great neighborhood are in close proximity to the public schools that provide them with an excellent education and stability, that we figure out a way to maintain those houses and to prevent gentrification from displacing them at the same time as we try and make room for new residents in spots where it's particularly effective to do that.
Thank you. And same question, Shana.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So the question is I pull it up again, but the goals of the strategic plan when it comes to housing, most notably to protect or preserve existing affordable housing, to produce more housing opportunities, and to protect renters. So, three items to balance. Do you agree with those goals, and what is your disposition as a council member to move forward on housing?
Thank you. I do support those goals. My concern is that it's not 2019 anymore, and we haven't seen a lot done to do any of those three things. We haven't seen housing added. We haven't seen. I guess we've protected what's there. The preserve piece is hard because you take housing out of the package and you play with it, and so you have to reinvest in it in order to keep it in good quality condition so that people are living with dignity. And we certainly haven't produced any housing since 2019. I am in favor of the tax credits that we're currently looking at in council. We have had pilots for decades, and most of those have already expired. I think we have about 7 left that are going to expire next year, and those landlords, developers, nonprofits, they depend on those tax credits in order to replace outdated systems. And the way that we are now looking at doing these tax credits is a little more precise in how they'll be applied. It used to be that you would come and sort of ask a council member, hey, can I get involved in a pilot, payment in lieu of taxes program? Can I get a tax break? And it was done very informally, and this sort of formalizes a system that's been going on for a long time. I think that our renter protections in Tacoma Park are really great, and we have done a lot to preserve the environment through stormwater protection, through tree protection, and that this is the place that we should be adding more homes for renters and for middle income home ownership. Thank you.
Yeah. And Jessica, any other thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I have a couple thoughts. One is that one of the words that Shana just used is very important to me in thinking about how we encourage housing and development in the spaces that it's most necessary to provide that encouragement. She mentioned targeting of the tax incentives that the city is contemplating adopting right now. There are 3 proposals on the table, 2 of which I think are targeted at the type of protection of our existing affordable units, as Shana mentioned. But the 3rd proposal, I think, lacks targeting. It calls for creating a tax holiday for 10 years entirely and another 5 years to phase in the tax payments by people who build multifamily housing units, rental units, anywhere in Tacoma Park. And I don't believe that that is a smart tax provision for us to be adopting. First of all, we haven't seen a fiscal analysis of how we could afford it. But secondly, there are ways to target tax incentives for parts of the city that have demonstrated an inability to develop. So that, like, for example, looking at New Hampshire
Thank you.
Avenue.
We'll get a chance to
Okay,
follow up
thanks.
again. Shana?
I would say that that with the climate that we have in Tacoma Park of having rent stabilization, I understand that people might think that developers have plenty of money to get projects off the ground. It's really difficult to get financing from a bank. And so in order to get more housing built, we are going to need to support all types of housing. You know, if we don't build other options for middle income renters, we will see them displacing low income renters, because a landlord can look at your credit score, my credit score, and choose to give the home to whoever has the higher credit score. So in order to stop displacement, we need some other options.
Thank you. And Jessica?
Well, I'll say 2 things quickly, and this is an extremely complicated issue, and I think neither one of us is a housing financier, so I'm not going to pretend that I'm more of an expert than I am, but I will say 2 things. First, this is the first time we've had a significant piece of commercial real estate potentially available in Tacoma Park. We don't know at this point whether developers are really going to stay away or whether they will come in to build market rate housing. I predict that they will come, and that this is premature for us to be enacting a broad-scale invitation to private developers to subsidize their effort to build here. And secondly, Montgomery County has a very innovative program of its own to work with developers to encourage them to build housing, and it's a model for us to look at and to consider how we couldn't work with the county of Montgomery County to make use of that type of a program rather than trying a tax subsidization on our tiny little tax base.
Thank you. And Shana, any other thoughts?
I would just clarify that it is a tax credit, that we would not be losing income that we're currently receiving through the current program, and that there have been opportunities. I've seen some homes built somewhere where a small apartment building might have fit, and you know, that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing only single family homes.
Okay. Since the tax credit issue came up, I'm going to ask a few more housing questions, and I don't want to, spend too much time necessarily going over the same ground. But there is very little to no new housing construction going on in Tacoma Park, have for a long time. And so I'm wondering, the idea of expanding housing for each of you, do you see tax credits as a good incentive for bringing in new housing? And are there other initiatives that you think the city could pursue that would help persuade new housing, a greater density in Tacoma Park? And Shana?
I do think that tax incentives, tax credits on foregone tax revenue is the best thing that we can do right now in order to support the building of more homes. What can the city do? We can do some zoning changes, just like we did with the minor master plan amendment, to allow the greater density along Maple Avenue and at the hospital site.
Thank you. And Jessica?
Well, I think that there are a couple of locations that I could point to where there are opportunities for both for commercial, residential, combinations of ingredients like that, that are, worth targeting with tax incentives. The way, for example, the city of College Park has developed a program of tax incentives in which they identify specific areas where the tax incentives will be available. I don't think they're needed for a swath of commercially developable land that has shown no signs of being undevelopable since it hasn't even come online yet. And the proposed tax credits would be without any kind of a sunset or any kind of a target of how many units, and then the tax incentives would be removed. I also think it's necessary, if you're going to manage the city, to be able to say what are the additional costs of providing those services for new residents. If we don't know the answer to that question, and we have no cap on how long or for how many units we're providing a tax holiday, we're in trouble financially.
Thank you. And Shana, would you like to add anything?
I guess I don't exactly know where Jessica was talking about adding in more housing. I know that I've seen some recommendations for adding it in along New Hampshire Avenue, doing sort of similar to what's proposed in the minor master plan to do some street level retail with apartments on top. I would just caution our community about, the possible displacement of businesses, because that's also an issue. For a lot of these people, this is their livelihood. As far as sunsetting and the extent of the program, we aren't done talking about it in council, and I do support, at least a yearly update from HCD that would come and tell us where we are in the program, what we've actually been successful in doing, so that we can eventually end the program if we decide that it's been successful enough. And then as far as services, a lot of the services that cost our taxpayers money, like public works, are included in what landlords are expected to cover for their tenants. And so it will be an increase, but it won't exactly be a one-to-one increase.
Thank you. All right, let's move on, kind of. I'm sorry, I feel like we have to talk about the minor master plan amendment. So and it reminds me of something that came up earlier with someone mentioned SHA, which we should spell out the acronyms, the State Highway Administration. So Tacoma Park does not fully control many things in our city, including zoning and including state highways. When it comes to the minor master plan amendment, which affected Hospital Hill and up on Flower Avenue and down along Maple Avenue, are there lessons that we can learn from that process, Jessica?
Well, I think that the first lesson that I took away from that is that we should have all been paying a lot closer attention when the city decided to expand the area that the minor master plan was going to review and change the zoning for, to include the Maple Avenue corridor. That was something that I heard discussed, but I really didn't take on board exactly what that was going to mean for the residents that we already have on Maple Avenue and who we want to encourage to be able to remain here. It made a lot of sense to me that we would revisit the zoning on Hospital Hill with the change in the usage that was going to occur there, and actually the zoning changes that were adopted for that part of the minor master plan area were relatively uncontroversial and probably could have been the subject of a really strong community consensus. Instead, what we had was very little attention paid to the details on Hospital Hill and a lot of controversy about the proposed rezoning that actually mostly went through for the Maple Avenue corridor, because many people felt that it posed a a risk of displacement of residents, and also, as the county executive's analysis clearly showed, proper groundwork had not been laid for it. No traffic study had been done, and the environmental effects had not been properly considered when the changes were adopted for the Maple Avenue corridor. So the lesson I took away from that was that when it was apparent that there was a good deal of community consensus available for one tract and a great deal of controversy associated with the other tract, the city would have done very well to take the advice of many people and pull back from trying to do both tracts and focus on the one where there was consensus about the need for the rezoning and the opportunity that that rezoning would create for new commercial, residential, and retail development. So I think listening to the community's input, that is the lesson that I took away from that experience.
Thank you. And Shayna, same question. Lessons learned on the minor master plan amendment?
Sure. I do want to start with that community input began in July of 2020, and so it was actually a really long public engagement. The footprint was decided on by the previous council, and Montgomery County Planning presented that to the city council back in 2020. They visited the city council over a dozen times during the process. They knocked on doors. They held events. They came to city events. I assisted Councilmember Hanzak in preparing a meeting for Ward 5 that was attended by the mayor and City Council Member Siemens. I do understand not having time to pay attention to everything that's going on in the city. It is a representative democracy, and I often, especially at the beginning, had, I didn't realize how far into the library project we were until, I attended a meeting that was talking about moving the library from one spot to another. But I do believe that that was the fault of my own. I do think that the city staff is doing a good job with the newsletter, with the website, with other public engagement events, and that, just because someone would knock on my door doesn't mean that I would necessarily open it up. And so, it's hard because we do have to move forward and make decisions as a city without hearing from every single resident. I would also say that the current council did not find that the environmental impact study that was provided to us by the county executive warranted us to stop progress with where we are or where we were. If we had received that earlier, maybe we could have told him the places that we found it to be lacking, and we could have worked on it further. And that's good for now.
Thank you. Jessica, would you like to follow up with any comments?
Quickly, yes, this was the previous city council and not the one that Shayna served on that made the decision. So I certainly don't lay the blame at her doorstep for that. And I will disagree somewhat on the description of the effective outreach to residents. I looked into how that outreach was done for the people on Maple Avenue. The types of questions that people were asked in the outreach conversations were sort of, what is your vision? They were not asked, how would you feel about the following activities happening in your neighborhood? And I think that they really could not have imagined the types of changes that could be coming their way as a result of the minor master plan. And finally, with respect to the impact studies, I don't want to get embroiled in the detailed procedural issues because life's too short. But suffice it to say that the county planning department did not follow its own rules as far as giving this county executive an opportunity to submit information and comments in a timely way. So the whole thing was telescoped, and it was not really
Thank you.
possible
I'll give
to
you a
do
chance
that
to come back.
properly.
I'll give you a chance to come back to that. Shayna?
I'll just, remind everybody that a zoning plan is not a final plan and that we're not there yet on exactly what's going to end up on that piece of land. And furthermore, that it's also a private piece of property. And so we are going to have to work with eventually the university once they have ownership of that property on what's going to happen there. And it's being that we don't know what's going to be built there, it's hard to do studies on possible plans that don't quite exist yet.
Thank you. And Jessica, final thoughts?
Well, I mean, that's the objective of doing good planning. You look at the potential build out and how dense the population and the traffic usages could be. Consider if we had 4,400 new residents in the city of Tacoma Park, which currently has about 17,000. That's a fairly extensive increase in people, and you'd better plan for it if you're enacting zoning changes that can make that happen. If you don't have a plan, you're going to wind up in trouble.
Okay, thank you. And if you care to, Shayna, you have final word.
I mean, there's lots of changes that happen, such as infrastructure for sewage, school changes that until you have a plan on the table, it's hard to evaluate. And then also, you're not going to get those changes. Like, WSSC isn't just going to come in and add in more more sewer management until we're at a point where we actually need it. Montgomery County Public Schools are not going to build another school until we actually have a population that requires them to do so.
Okay, great. Well, let's move on to the other part of the strategic plan, which is economic development. And the goals are quite similar in terms of preserving existing businesses, producing opportunities for small businesses, and protecting businesses from discrimination, so forth. The do you see, and we'll start with you, Shayna, we have change coming. At some point, I hear there's a purple line that eventually will be, on our outskirts. And actually, Jessica pointed out that there's a lot of new housing right across the border in DC. So, change happens all around Tacoma Park. Do you see opportunities for Tacoma Park to expand economic opportunities for commercial and retail businesses? And, what are your thoughts on how the city can support such activities?
Sure. I was disappointed that DC chose not to put any street level retail at the intersection of Laurel and Eastern. I think that it's going to be hard for all of us to get that cup of coffee that we want at Bevco, with that added population. But I'm hoping that we can be innovative and maybe support, food trucks in the streetery during the weekend, because for a lot of businesses, that's where they first start, is with that food truck. I'm excited about the addition of street level retail along Maple Avenue and also at the Hospital Hill location. We know that people enjoy shopping in a long corridor of shops where they can keep on going, which I think we all enjoy, various holiday events that happen in the OTBA area, and providing that to other residents as well. It is not just people of Ward 1 and people of Ward 3 that want to be able to walk to businesses. It's everybody. I think that we can all remember when, I think it was Magic Johnson was supporting Starbucks locations in Black communities, and it turned out that they were really thriving. And so, supporting those kinds of things within our community that's on Maple Avenue. I've also talked to other residents who live in that area that would like to have a business but aren't able to afford rents in other areas. So it would also offer more opportunities to more supplies, so that it'll help address the demand and hopefully bring down those prices. And then, as far as the city's economic development, the addition of middle income housing at Hospital Hill would help us to diversify our tax revenue, which would help the city.
Great, thank you. Jessica?
Well, I think you're asking about economic development and the future for the city. I think even though I live in Ward 1 and I would be a Ward 1 representative, I think there's been a concern on the part of some council members, rightly so, that more attention is paid to the existing thriving downtown business district in Old Town than has been paid to other parts of the city. And I think particularly about, since you mentioned the Purple Line, that this is a really important area for the next city council to put front and center in their thinking about the next stage of economic development in the city. It's been really difficult for that region to begin to show its ability to thrive and to star in the Tacoma Park story. There's a Purple Line coalition made up of the little communities along the Purple Line, littler than, say Bethesda, and Tacoma Park is one of them. And I think our unique selling point is the amazing variety of restaurants and cultural, shops that represent different cultures and nationalities in Tacoma Park, especially in the Crossroads area. And that it should really be our goal to have an OTBA-like organization, Old Town Business Association-like organization that works as effectively as possible to make that unique selling point known to our neighbors all along the Purple Corridor, just the way Old Town has been so successful in selling itself, like we saw with the street festival just yesterday. And we are going to attract people to come here and shop and have meals in the Purple Line corridor by advertising our unique restaurants and our unique shops, not by trying to be another Bethesda, because people in Bethesda can stay home if they want to. But if we want to bring that money and that retail operation here, we need to really focus on how we can support those small businesses that are there, that are unique and are attractive. And so I think that is a key area for the next city council to tackle as the Purple Line finally becomes more of a reality. So that's how I would really focus economic development efforts in the next couple of years.
Great, thank you. And Shana, any further comments on economic development?
Yeah, I mean, we do have two other business associations. We have the Long Branch Business Association that the businesses that are in Ward 5 belong to. We have the Crossroads Business Association that the businesses in Ward 6 belong to. I would want to hear from more residents and from the council members in those areas before making recommendations about what to do. I think that there are some cultural differences in exactly what kind of shops people want to see, and that you need to be respectful of the community culture in an area and support them with who they are, and not try to change them into what into what OTBA is. When I've talked to Laura Barkley, like, she specifically has said that she's not interested in managing the other areas, and where this all comes together is within HCD within the city.
Great, thank you. Jessica, any other thoughts?
Well, of course, we're not talking about the OTBA, the Old Town Business Association, being the right vehicle or the right style for neighborhoods that are unique in their own cultural and restaurant and resident personalities. The idea is to effectively represent them and lift them up by having similar kinds of engagement on the part of all the residents and businesses, but particularly the businesses for economic development. So the Crossroads and Long Branch associations are great. The point I'm trying to make is that if the city focuses on selling itself to the other cities along the towns along the Purple Line corridor, then we bring new people in to enjoy those businesses and restaurants in their own glory, not trying to recreate Old Town any more than we'd want to recreate Bethesda. Let's enjoy our cultural diversity and all those yummy restaurants too.
Great, thank you. And any final thoughts on this topic, Shana?
I don't think that Jessica and I are completely different here. I mean, like, I don't necessarily think that a business association is the right way to do this, but I do think that it's important to have collaboration and to come up with a way to highlight our city. I've talked to Councilmember Hanzak many times about our political activism. Like, could we be like a tourist site for political activism? Because there's been a lot of really important people here, and so I do think that coming up with some ways to market ourselves as a city that brings the areas together is important.
Great, thanks. Jessica, any final thoughts?
Well, we may be in violent agreement about this point, that it's important to market ourselves and not just one little corner of Tacoma Park, but all of the other little nodules of interest and diversity that, offer a lot of different opportunities for people from outside of Tacoma Park to come and enjoy.
All right. Well, I want to talk about financing everything here in Tacoma Park. There's a couple ways to come at a budget, and one way is to look at revenue, and another way is to look at what services the city is providing. So, presuming that there will be tight budgets in the foreseeable future, and that there's a goal to maintain a prudent reserve. I'm wondering, we'll start with you, Shayna. What are your thoughts on the services that the city is providing, and the extent to which it should maintain the services as they are, or change services in some way?
I will be very clear that I think that our policing and public works should stay within the city. If we gave them back to the county, it wouldn't be, they wouldn't just call it a wash. And we've worked really hard on tax duplication, and those two services were two that we made the most gains on, that we were able to get public works and police well compensated from the county. This is because when we worked together with other municipalities, those are two services that most cities choose to do on their own, separate from the county, in order to control for a better quality of service. We've also been cautioned by our city manager that in his experience of 27 years, he's only seen regrets from cities that have chosen to put those back to the county. We would see the ethos of our community is currently represented by our city's police force. They care about being a community-focused group. They racially look like the makeup of Tacoma Park, whereas the makeup of the police officers in Montgomery County are about 80% white. And our chief of police is really dedicated to our community-oriented policing. So I would not be in favor of giving those things back to the city. I could go a little bit more on budget stuff, but I could wait for the next question.
Sure. Okay. Jessica, where are we at in terms of city services?
Well, I'm not sure that you meant by your question which ones do we want to give back or not,
Well,
although certainly it's a reasonable question
Well,
for
I
Shayna to
think
have
it's
tackled.
yeah, I think there are different directions you could go, because,
Okay.
if we, do we want to maintain the same level of city services? Are there city services we want to reconsider?
Well, I'll say a couple of things about this. First of all, I think it does make sense for us to periodically and systematically think through that question with respect to each of the main categories of city services that we have elected to provide for ourselves instead of the counties providing them for us. And secondly, I think that there's an opportunity that our new city manager has presented us with, or is putting on the table for us, to do a good job of evaluating, of having some meaningful performance metrics to see how are we doing in providing those city services. Are we doing it in the most effective and efficient way? It could be that we can continue to afford doing it ourselves if we identify opportunities for making the system work more effectively and efficiently. And he's let a contract to have somebody evaluate that for us to make sure we're getting what we need to from the money that we spend. So I think that makes sense. I also think that there are city services where we might benefit from being more fully integrated into county programs. One example that I believe is worth evaluating more closely is stormwater management. I realize we have stormwater management fees that fund that largely through it's a second tax that we each pay as residents and businesses in Tacoma Park based on impervious surfaces and so forth. But the fact is that if you're in a watershed where the interactions between the different legal bodies don't necessarily match the borders of where the water flows, and for a city as small as we are, it's difficult to necessarily have all the clout that we need in negotiations with transboundary, water sources. That I think it's worth evaluating whether this is an area that we actually benefit from managing independently. We may get really nice water gardens here, there, and everywhere, but I mean, the large-scale infrastructure issues really are transboundary, and so that's something that I would recommend that we consider reevaluating. But we could go through chapter and verse of every of the city services. And by the way, there's a document on the city's website, Your Tax Dollars at Work, in case you're wondering what all services the city of Tacoma Park says that it provides. It's dated 2019, but I don't think it's all that out of date. But you can see there are a lot of little things we do, opportunities to support our community, but also potentially opportunities to identify ways to save money and still continue to operate municipal services instead of being part of the county program. So it needs a close look, and it needs also an opportunity to consult with residents through some kind of a process of asking people to weigh in on what's most important to them.
And I will note that every city council that comes in faces the task of going through the budget, and it's not a small document, and it's not easily it doesn't fit into a 3-minute response super well. I understand that. Anything that you'd like to add, Shana, in terms of city services the city is providing, and any changes that you might consider?
Yeah, I worked on the finance and budget work group that, in part recommended that the city manager hire a consultant to do the work that Jessica just talked about, and voted in favor of it. And I think it's great for us to look at some metrics. As far as the stormwater management, I struggle with what we should do as a city. I understand how Montgomery County does it, and that everybody looks at their Rainscapes program. It is mostly, upper class homeowners that participate in it, and it's a tax that affects everybody. It's not just like stormwater fees only that are going into that. And so we could get involved in their program maybe. I'm not exactly sure what other tax revenue they might take from us in order for us to get involved in that. But I worry about the equity in participating in the Rainscapes program as is.
Okay, thanks. And Jessica, any other thoughts?
Yes, I think that we have some major positive opportunities with our new city manager, who for this year, for the first time, will be presiding over the entire budgetary process. Last year, he came in too late to really have much an effect on it. I've already seen improvements in the way the budget was presented to the public, the budget narrative last year. It was much more straightforward and comprehensible, and clearly stated that we are operating in a deficit mode, and really tried to make it more understandable to the community. So I'm excited that we are going to have a different budget process this year, in which it starts much earlier and begins with more of a public process to discuss with the community exactly where our money goes, and give them more of a voice in calling for how they want to see the money spent. And so I think this is a good opportunity for us to delve into this with the council, in collaboration with the new city manager, to see what kind of changes we can make that are positive. So,
thank you. Any other burning thoughts from either?
Just that this city manager told me when I was talking to him about my concerns about taxes being raised, he said that he has never suggested a tax increase in his 27 years. So here's hoping we can keep it going in that direction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds
right.
pretty good.
All right, let's move on. The speaking of city services, we have a sustainability manager. The city of Tacoma Park has made a commitment to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2035. There are two sides to the climate crisis. So one is resilience of the community, and the other is, how much the city contributes to the global warming situation. Let's see, I think we're with you, Jessica. Do you see this as a worthy goal for the city? And can you give me an assessment of where the city is in terms of achieving its sustainability goals?
I think The goal of net zero is you have to set an ambitious goal and do everything in your power to try and meet it. Whether it's realistic or not, I think remains to be proven. I will say that I'm hoping the city does not go about trying to get there by purchasing emission credits. I think that's a cheater's way out of it. If we have money to buy emission credits, we should spend it on doing activities in the city that directly reduce emissions ourselves. We have a lot of very favorable sustainability programs that I support, and so I think we should to mention a couple. The city did a tree canopy cover several years ago, or a tree canopy cover study several years ago to identify areas in the city that were in need of additional tree cover, and I think that contributes significantly to meeting our goals in several ways, and that I appreciate the fact that that's being implemented. I would like to see it focus on the unshaded routes to school in the areas of the city that currently are the least well covered by the tree canopy. I support the involvement of the city in the initiative from residents to create several food forests here. Not only has the city contributed a modest amount of money, but it's contributed a great deal of mulch, of which we have a fairly generous supply. And I say, all the mulch they want, let's give it to them. And I also would support the city focusing more on getting its electric vehicle charging system up and running in an efficient, effective way, because residents who do have cars will need that infrastructure to be local and available for them to realistically want to purchase a car and rely on it. So we do have a number of programs like that, and a very effective sustainability manager that I would like to see us continue to support. It makes sense for us, just if you look at the stormwater impacts we've had as a result of climate change changing the intensity and the frequency of massive rainfall events, it's obvious we need to pay attention to those issues.
Great, thank you. And Shana, how are we doing in terms of our sustainability plan?
It's hard because we don't have a big budget to do a lot more than what we're already doing. I agree with Jessica. The EV infrastructure is important to me. I was speaking to a resident yesterday. I am, interested in perhaps cutting ties with some of them that are broken and getting them replaced by another company because as an owner of an EV that got convinced by our Sustainable Maryland committee that it was the right next move for me, I would like to be able to plug my car in as I'm going around. And the other recommendation that the Sustainable Maryland Committee made was to increase composting. I think that especially when we have these things that are already being recommended, we should try to implement those first before looking for new things to do. Similarly, the LIDC stormwater study, I would favor us moving forward on some of that before we start looking for other things to do.
Great, thank you. Jessica, any other thoughts?
Yes, I neglected to mention the efforts to retrofit and rehabilitate existing buildings, especially of our housing stock that's supporting the affordable housing programs. There is a great deal of federal money that's been made available through the IRA, which I forget what that stands for, but the boatload of money that was adopted in the current administration, and the way by doing that, by avoiding the demolition and building of new buildings, you keep a lot of CO2 emissions out of the air, and you can continue to support affordable housing that way. So I do think that it makes sense that the city has been seeking those sources of funding and working to make them available to some of the larger building owners.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I agree that it's good that we're doing that. And when I recently reached out to a nonprofit that owns, I think it's 5 different buildings within the city, they were talking about retrofitting, not tearing, not raising buildings. They were talking about retrofitting what they already have, and then possibly building on underutilized parking lots for new units.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Sounds good.
Okay.
I've spoken with the same guys, and I'm excited about the possibility that parking lot would one day have another building to provide additional affordable housing.
All right, let's go with a question. Perhaps will distinguish the two of you a little bit. Let's see, where are we? I think Shana, you go first. What is an issue that you would like to be known for from your time on the city council? What is an issue that you intend to champion as Ward 1 city council member?
Sure. I always say that my council members and I, we usually get here on one issue, and then housing quickly becomes number two for us. And so housing, I would still say, it's a very important issue, but it's still the number two for me. Jessica brought up looking like Bethesda. I am very frustrated that Bethesda has bike lanes and we do not have bike lanes. I would like to see us making a lot of progress on that. I'm really excited. We just got a new transportation member on staff, a transportation planner on staff. I would like to see us get temporary traffic control instruments, such as speed bumps, such as things that allow you to put in bike lanes temporarily, so that we can sort of experiment and see how it works out. When I look at Tacoma Avenue, when I talk to residents that are on Tacoma Avenue, they complain about cars really speeding through there. We now are SHA, State Highway Administration, has promised us a light at Piney Branch and Ritchie. Now we just need to get it funded by our state elected officials. Please ask them to fund it. But we need to slow down that traffic that's on Tacoma Avenue. It's really wide. The only way to do that, in my opinion, is with a road diet. So if you provided protected bike lanes on Tacoma Avenue, it would connect people from the Metro Branch Trail over to Silver Spring, downtown Silver Spring, where there's a lot of bike infrastructure already. And I am excited about our Maple Avenue connectivity project that would connect DC all the way to Sligo Creek Parkway, which would be really important. I am currently in talks with someone from Black Girls Do Bike about creating some events that would help bring women and minorities into some of the bike planning in our community.
Great. Thank you. And Jessica, what is an issue you would like to be known for?
Well, I think I'm going to bring up something that may not be at the top of everyone's list, because we've already talked about a lot of the substantive issues that the city faces. I want to talk about a process issue. I would like to be the council member who's known for improving their relationship between the city council and the residents of the city of Tacoma Park, both in terms of the communications that I make to what would be my own constituents, by keeping them in the loop about all the changes that are coming, what is before the city council, what role they might play. I would like to reopen the doors to a better back and forth between people who come before the council to talk about the issues of concern to them and the council. As someone who's sat in the chair that you are in tonight, Eric, many times to try and make a point to the city council, oftentimes people don't feel that the exchange is really very heartfelt and two-way. You feel like the most important thing you hear from the podium can often be, your 3 minutes are up. And that is not a very good way to encourage back and forth between the residents and the city. I feel as though we have many people in the city of Tacoma Park with a lot of areas of expertise who come before the city council and make offers to assist with many of the challenges we face, be it on the environmental front, be it on the city planning front and the land use issues, be it on legal issues about, the First Amendment and how we interacted with the issues over what kind of signage to post. You name it, there are people in Tacoma Park who know a lot and would be willing to make their help available to the city if the city would open its door a little bit wider to that. And it used to be that city council interactions with the public were more open-ended. I think there are ways to build that into how we run the city that would really make people feel that they were engaged once again. And for many people, that's something that they have missed, and it would open the door to successful collaboration across all of the topics that we've talked about tonight. So I'd like to be focused on that as one of the things that I would accomplish if I served on the city council, working with my fellow city council members to find ways to do that are workable and don't keep us here till midnight, but still open the door to a better dialogue.
Great, thank you. And Shane, I don't know if you have any other comments.
I guess I would say that I think that the city council meetings are just one entry point for public engagement, and that they are at an hour where it's hard for families to go to, for people with young children to go to, and that, that the 3-minute rule was put in by Bruce Williams in order to have our meetings be a little bit easier on everybody, including staff having to stay till late hours. I'm all in favor of when we're working on stuff like the minor master plan to stay till 3 o'clock in the morning. But I think we should be careful about making that a regular thing. I do make sure that I attend a lot of public events, and that is so that I can, especially on the weekends, that is so that I can make contact with residents that might not be able to come here on a Wednesday night. And I engage in a lot of email, a lot of in-person meetings, a lot on the phone with residents to help residents that aren't able to be here for meetings. I am in favor of going back to doing some meetings in other parts of the wards as well.
Thank you. Any other thoughts, Jessica?
Yeah, I think that Shayna's point that she just made at the very end is one that I agree with, that from time to time the city council has convened in the rec center instead of here. I think that's a kind of showing a desire to make yourself available directly in the community is something that it makes sense for the city council to do. And I'm always happy to see that happen, especially when it's topics that are more relevant to that part of the city. And we don't have to do everything together through city council meetings. I think a good example was the forum that was just held on was it just a week ago on the tax proposals that are pending, in which we had an opportunity to hear in depth from the city staff and for people to participate in person or via virtual means. So that's an innovation we can use, and I just think it's something that helps to keep Tacoma Park the city that it is, which is one where people really feel engaged with their city government and feel like they have a role to play. That's what is going to keep us the way we want to be.
Great, thank you. Any final thoughts, either one of you? Yeah. All right. So the real question tonight is which one of you should be the next city council member for Ward 1. And I could ask you to explain why you are the best candidate, but as it turns out, we're at the time where you provide closing statements. So I think you're probably prepared to do that.
Eric's brutal.
So Jessica, why don't we start with you with the closing statement?
Thanks, Eric, and thanks to everybody who sat through this. I appreciate it. It's not as long as a city council meeting, but it ain't nothing. So I think that the city of Tacoma Park is a unique place, and that we have a small city. Why go to the trouble to have a small municipality all of your own if you can't control your own destiny? It's really, we need to make it worth our while to stay an independent city and one that is working together to control our destiny. We talked tonight about a lot of important issues that are going to affect us going into the future, how we use our land, how we spend our money, how we make room for new neighbors while at the same time keeping the neighbors that we have today able to remain here to raise their kids, to age in place, and to support one another. I think I could bring to this position a set of skills and experiences that would enable me to contribute to making those things real for us. And I think that I have the ability to collaborate with people across different points of view and different ages and stages in their families' growth and development to look for those solutions. And I would really welcome the opportunity to serve my community in this way. Thank you.
Thank you. And Shayna?
I would say that helping development to move forward is not necessarily a loss of our autonomy, that we will be a part of the process of, moving forward in some ways with the Hospital Hill development. We should live up to our own values through our budget and through our planning. We need to take care of some inefficiencies now and add to our revenue for the future. Part of what makes Tacoma Park a great city is having a city government that can advocate for the removal of restricted covenants, protect our tree canopy beyond what the county requires, and provide additional protections to affordable rental housing. I've been a partner on this council. I will continue to do that. When I read Ms. Landman's answers to some of the candidate questionnaires, I did see lots of places where we agree and don't even need to compromise. I am not ready to start another project at the junction right now. I agree that solar panels should be installed. I do think that we should fund panels and stormwater management of that lot through charging for parking there. I want to remind our community that the Washington Adventist Hospital is privately owned land. We cannot dictate what will happen there. They are an invested community member, but they will also need help to make good decisions. We don't yet have a development plan, and being a good partner is an important part of reaching a concrete plan. I support the zoning that the previous council initiated. I'm looking forward to being a part of this community for at least another 10 years. I moved here for the public schools, and I am hoping that one of my children will take Mercy on their own budget and choose Montgomery College. I appreciate all of the support that I've been given in my positions, especially from Ward 1 residents.
All right, great. And finally, how can our listeners, viewers, find out more about you, about where you stand on issues when you're having events, Jessica?
They can check my campaign website, Jessica for tkpkward1.net.
Shana?
Thank you. Yeah, my website is shanafulcher.com. There is a elected official part and there is a candidate part, and so they can click on wherever it is that they would like to go.
Okay, thank you both. I know that both of you are extremely busy, as are many here in the audience. So I appreciate your time and coming here to give your thoughts and maybe help some of the voters in Tacoma Park reach a conclusion about whom they would prefer to have sit in the Ward 1 seat on the next city council. And so with that, that concludes our Ward 1 election forum for 2024. I want to remind you that this will be rebroadcast on on Tacoma Radio starting at 1 o'clock this coming Sunday, and it will be running nonstop on YouTube. So you can go to YouTube and check it out.
That's a scary thought.
I don't know how many times you think we want to watch this.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
seconds before the end, I'll put my one finger up.
Okay.
So I should do a thumb though. I'll do a finger. What's that? They did a sound check. Are we on? Oh, hi, we're on. Hello and welcome back, or welcome to the final election forum for 2024, sponsored by WOWD-LP Tacoma Park. This is the Ward 3 Candidates Forum, and I'm joined by Matt Bormet, Lucy Moore, and Roger Schlegel, all vying for that seat for the next City Council. I gave some information at the top of the last forum about voting, and just a reminder, if you are 16 or older, you can vote in Tacoma Park. I would recommend it. So if you are not sure if you're registered, then you can check with the city clerk. You can go to the City of Tacoma Park website and look at election information. Ballots will be arriving in the mail shortly, I've been told. You can mail them in. They must be postmarked by Election Day, which is November 5th. And given some of the things I've been hearing from the post office, early might be better. There's a drop box here at the community center on Maple Avenue. There's also a drop box up on at the Recreation Center on New Hampshire Avenue for just dropping your ballot. So you can do that as well. A reminder, if you go to your polling place for the national election, you will not see an opportunity to vote in the Tacoma Park election. So we have a separate election going on. Also relevant to this particular race, we have 3 candidates, which means that instant runoff voting is in play with the Ward 3 election, the Ward 3 seat. So when you vote for this position, if you live in Ward 3, then you have a chance to rank the candidates in the order in which you prefer them, and not just vote for one. So keep that in mind. It's, one of our experiments, and something that Tacoma Park has led on, which is ranked choice voting or instant runoff voting. I'm not sure which term we're using these days, but anyway, I was asked by a resident to provide my affiliations. So I am personally funded by an international nonprofit that focuses on pediatric HIV, and I received some funding from the City of Tacoma Park as a freelancer editing the Tacoma Park newsletter. However, tonight I am here fully with WOWD-LP, which is a nonpartisan radio station right here in Tacoma Park. Furthermore, I'm a longtime member of the TPSS Food Co-op. I was on the board of the Tacoma Foundation and was the president for some time. I am the founder of the Azalea Awards. I was on the last Tacoma Junction Committee. I think it was in 1997 that I was on that committee. I was a judge for the 4th of July parade at one point, and for about 20 years I was Randy Gibson's next door neighbor. So that's all about me. A longtime Ward 3 resident, actually. Most of my, I've spent more time in my life living in Ward 3 than anywhere else. Okay, with that in mind.
Let Eric do it. Should we just let Eric? You guys want to walk and just let Eric take this thing? That's a good resume.
Yeah. So with that in mind, we'll hear about your affiliations perhaps. But this is set up so that each of you will have a chance to answer a question for 3 minutes. There will be a chance to follow up for 1 minute. And if you care to have any final thoughts, another 1 minute. We're going to be covering some very basic questions that the next City Council will be facing, almost certainly. And I have a couple of other questions I will be asking you as well. So I should stop talking and let you all start talking. I'm just going to go from my right to left. Matt, would you care to give us an opening statement?
Thank you. And thanks, Eric, for doing this and for going through every ward and for your many years of service to our community and to Wowdy, where usually this time on Monday nights I'm a DJ. So full disclosure, I am associated with Wowdy, but make no policy choices there. I also want to thank Lucy and Roger for being here and for caring about our community. All three of us really do. These are two really good people to my right. I want to thank my kids, Cassius and Persephone, 3 and 5, 5 and 3. And most of all, my wife, Megan, who, as these guys will attest, our spouses are putting up with a lot for us to do this. Last year, Megan and I opened a bookstore called People's Book. And it's been a joy to meet more of our neighbors, hear what they care about, and build out a community center where people from all over the area can come and enjoy the dozens of free events and book clubs that we put on every month. I'm proud to say that earlier this year we won the aforementioned Azalea Award, and a month or two ago we were named Washington City Paper's best bookstore in DC. The reason we've had that success is because we're involved in an earnest effort at community building, and that same effort is why I'm running for council. Outside of selling books, I've spent 20 years working in public policy towards progressive goals. For a decade, I was a transportation staffer on Capitol Hill, working for Democrats to fund bike and pedestrian infrastructure and to create a safer transportation system in all modes, but especially on our roads. These days, I do a lot of work around the clean energy transition and finding ways to build out battery recycling infrastructure so that we can transition away from fossil fuels. That work requires finding ways to be successful very quickly because we simply can't wait on climate action. One thing I've learned in my time working on all these policy things is that success is really only achieved by having leaders across local, county, state, and even the federal government pushing in the same direction. That's one of the key parts to this role. We need to work with our leadership at the Montgomery County Council level, at the state level, and even the federal level if we're going to tackle and achieve our goals on housing, transportation, and climate, and given my background, I'm ready to do that work day one. I've spent this campaign listening to people in Ward 3, whether through knocking on doors, holding events at every playground in the ward, meeting up in people's homes, and also at the bookstore. I sent a survey around to everybody in Ward 3, and I hope you got it in your mailbox. If you live in the ward, please send it back to me. I really care about what people have to say about the ward, and I'm trying to respond to every single one of those. What I've heard so far is that people are concerned about traffic safety, attainable housing, and making sure we have a city that lives within its means. Accordingly, those are my priorities, and I hope we have a chance to talk about all of them tonight. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. Lucy?
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Eric, for hosting this and the staff for working late. I know this is the second one of these, and for both my opponents for showing up tonight. I'm Lucy Moore. I'm a mom, an architect, a community organizer, and an 11-year resident of Ward 3. I've served on city committees for 9 of those 11 years that we've been here. And I'm running for city council because I'm very excited for the mayor and current council's housing agenda. It's something we need critically. And I'm excited to see that they're taking on ways to build more housing in our community, specifically rental housing, and also find ways to improve and preserve the affordable housing that we already have. I'm also running because I really believe in this community, and I believe that we can do more to live the values that we have that I know we all hold dear. And by that, I specifically mean that when we as a city are talking about our city budget or city programs, I want to make sure that poverty and poverty alleviation are always part of that conversation. In Tacoma Park, 1 in 5 households live on less than $35,000 a year. So that's households, so that includes families, on less than $35,000. And I think we all know this is an expensive region to live in. And I think we also know that this country has made living in poverty a very hard experience. And I want Tacoma Park to continue to be a place that helps to provide at least a bit of stability. And we can do that by continuing and enhancing some of the programs that we enacted or enhanced during our through our COVID relief dollars. So that includes a direct cash assistance program, emergency housing relief, or emergency rental assistance, and community food insecurity reduction. So all of those are programs that we put dollars to that are critical. And I want to make sure as we talk about this very tight budget we're facing, that's part of the conversation. I'm also running because I want to make sure that our city enacts its sustainability and climate action plan. And I want to be a part of this city being an active partner with MCPS to make sure that we get enough teachers and adequate facilities for all of our students in our immediate Tacoma Park, but also in this part of the county more broadly. And lastly, I'm running because I have the skills to get things done. Through my work as an architect and as a community organizer, and also through my service on city committees, I have developed the knowledge and the experience and the communication and collaboration skills to get things done for Ward 3 and also for our larger community. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger?
Good evening. Yes. I wanted to first thank my family, Sasha, Ainsley, Theo, and Sasha's mom, Helen, who have obviously been working hard behind the scenes here. All of my hardworking supporters, people who have organized meet and greets and forums, the voters who've spoken to me at their doors, at events, through email, Lucy and Matt for opening up a great conversation about the issues, you, Eric, and our current council member, Randy Gibson, who has just been a great independent voice on the council and whom I appreciate for his decision to endorse me. And I also want to thank Jesse Carpenter and the entire communications staff. So I've lived in Tacoma Park for 22 years. My family's enjoyed all of the parks, all of the streets, all of the forests, the shops, the restaurants, and block parties on Allegheny Avenue. For 15 and more years, I've been deeply engaged and often picking the hardest challenges. I was a co-president of the co-op nursery school as a stay-at-home dad. I was the president of the Pinecrest Community Association, where we brought in new sidewalk segments and a much-needed playground. I joined the Tacoma Junction Task Force and was heavily involved in outreach, research, and consensus building with that group. I've done budget analysis, invited to do so by the mayor and others in critical fiscal years. I've stood up for racial equity policy. I've served on the Parking Management Task Force. I participated in every public process. I've been a past candidate and know every street and have talked to voters in every ward. And I've independently worked to help and assist Randy Gibson during his current term. I have 5 priorities: climate response coordination, safer, secure, greener streets, homes to move into at any income level and any stage of life, affordability, which includes having great oversight with our budget, and what this all adds up to is a council that emphasizes accountability to our residents, renters, and owners alike, for our city's past racial harms, and to those who are going to belong to this 2.1 square miles well into the future, including our kids and grandkids. The 3 strengths that I hope to show you tonight are the knowledge, the deep knowledge that I bring from my experience, my comfort with conflict, which is always centered on facts, and my focus on the importance of setting objectives and following through as a way of rebuilding trust in the community. Ultimately, the council's job is to set objectives, make good policy, and provide great oversight. If you don't hear it tonight, I hope you get it on my website, which is roger4ward3.org. Thank you.
Thank you. I realized I didn't put my finger up. I'm going to remember to do this. So 30 seconds before your time's up, I'll put my finger up in the future. Since I do have so much experience in Ward 3, we'll go with you, Lucy. I consider Ward 3 to be kind of a city within a city. It's like a micro city inside a micro city, from Hell's Bottom to Tacoma Junction to New Hampshire Avenue. So I want to focus here first. I mean, obviously, City Council considers policy for the entire city, but you are representing Ward 3. Tell me about the challenges that Ward 3 faces and how you plan to address them as City Council member.
Thank you. So I'll say it could be a long list. I'll name two, but really focus on one. One, I think safe streets are critical, and I'm excited that the city has an equity-based, data-based plan for addressing that. And I'm excited to serve as city council to help direct projects there through that process so that our ward can, like you said, as a city within a city, that our ward itself can equitably get that kind of safe streets treatment. But I've spoken about poverty. I think that's critical in Ward 3. Our poverty levels are lower than in other parts of the city, but it's still there. And I think a way that translates to a challenge for our entire ward is public safety. Our ward has, our street has experienced, gunshots on the regular. In fact, a 14-year-old boy was shot and killed 2 blocks from my home this summer. It was in DC, but our neighborhood still lost a member of our community and a child of our community. And while I am aware and support all the coordination between police departments, so between Tacoma Park Police, Ward 3 sits at the corner with other jurisdictions, so they coordinate with the District of Columbia, with Prince George's County. I do think that we need to be meeting these public safety concerns with resources that go beyond just, a criminal justice response. So we need part of why I'm so adamant that we really take poverty head on is that a way to improve public safety is to improve stability for everyone involved. And so I want our ward to be safe for everyone. And that includes those who have the least stability in their lives, who are the most vulnerable to gun violence, the most vulnerable to other points of insecurity. And now how you address that, I don't expect Tacoma Park on our own to fix it. But I do think just as we're asking our police department to work with other jurisdictions, we need to be working closely, forming more relationships with the neighborhoods around us, so that whether it's neighbor to neighbor or community resource to community resource, we're working together holistically, because I think a lot of these issues sort of get exacerbated when you have these jurisdictions lining up and folks have to go different places for resources. It can feel like there's too much fragmentation to do something about, but I think relationships are the way we do something about that. And so I would take that as a serious priority and in the role of Ward 3 City Council.
Great, thank you. Same question, Roger?
In Ward 3, the question is,
Yeah, Ward 3 specifically.
Ward 3 specifically, Lucy, thank you for what you pointed out. I was Pinecrest Association president for several years, and we at that time also saw that it was an area that had its own specific challenges, being close to both the district and Prince George's, with the complexities of safety and law enforcement in that area. I agree with you that caring for families and building those connections is super important. And when I was part of Pinecrest Association, we were reaching across the line to Lamond Riggs and to that ANC in DC, in Ward 4 DC. And also I was getting to know people in Chilham, the neighborhood in Prince George's County across New Hampshire. One of the things that we need to look at in that area is New Hampshire Avenue and the important and urgent need to build those relationships across the line, because if development is to be coming to there, we need a clear vision that residents on both sides, as well as business owners, have joined into. With Eastern Avenue, we're looking at a big rebuild now scheduled for 2027, and it's very important that our Ward 3 council member be involved to get the details right. I found out while door knocking along Eastern a few days ago that there was a 2-year-old child killed along Eastern Avenue in the steep block south of Kansas, just due to reckless driving, hitting a car that was pulling out of a driveway. More broadly, I hope to bring my experience with Pinecrest and my knowledge of all of the streets to some other issues, which are cut-through traffic and generally reckless driving through our neighborhoods, which has only increased, and many residents are quite concerned about that. I've done traffic counts at some key intersections like Walnut and Westmoreland, and I wholeheartedly support our new traffic planner looking systematically at these cut-through routes. At a minimum, we need courteous drivers. I would support lowering speed limits, and I would also support, if need be, making a few routes more circuitous so that the navigation simply doesn't encourage people to take those routes. Beyond that, if I have time, I'll just add that I've talked to a great many residents who are looking to move into a new stage of life, a new kind of housing in town, and they are stymied as to how they're going to do that. So it certainly is an important thing for us to be a true hometown, including Ward 3, that people have options to keep moving as they move through life.
Thank you. And Matt?
Yeah, thanks. So, you know, what I think is less important, what I've heard when I talk to people is that the list of concerns that I listed off at the start, and that's traffic safety. And I appreciate Roger agreeing with me that we need more traffic safety facilities out there. We need traffic calming. We need to put Eastern Avenue on a road diet. We need to figure out how to make New Hampshire Avenue new. It's something we've been talking about, New Hampshire Avenue, for half a decade. They care about attainable housing, and they care about making sure we have a city that lives within its means. So specifically on transportation, again, Eastern is a major problem. It's striped poorly. People continue to drive down at 45 miles an hour, and I heard much of the same concerns that Roger just mentioned when I was over there. I hear about public safety from folks as traffic safety as well, and having a police department. I think we should keep our independent police department, and I like that we have a police chief who understands our community, and a police force that's responsive to our needs. I'll tell you, my house got burglarized. Tacoma Park PD got the guy, and it turned out he had done 3 or 4 other burglaries as well. I don't know if I would have gotten that attention from the Montgomery County Police. We've also had a rash of break-ins in Ward 3 downtown, and I was very pleased that we had 2 detectives quickly come talk to the Old Town Business Association and business owners about what they're doing about this, and I got the feeling that we were getting the attention we needed that I don't know we would get from Montgomery County Council. On attainable housing, for me, the first thing the city needs to do, and hopefully before the election, is have a positive vote on the 3 tax credits that are before the council, and then find a path forward on the 4th one on missing middle. I'm sure we'll get to that topic later, so I won't elaborate more. We also need to be a partner with the county and with the state to build more housing of all types, affordable, new, invest in existing stock. I'm an all of the above sort of housing guy, and I hope the city council will move forward with those tax credits soon. And I want to hear about more good ideas that the staff has. And the last one on living within our means, I think the city faces a major budget cliff in 2026, and it's going to take serious consideration on what we want to do there. For me, what we need to do is grow the pie and expand our tax base and diversify it, both with retail and new housing. I'll tell you, there's a shortage of retail space in Tacoma Park. It took me a year to find a good space for the bookstore, and I resorted to cold calling landlords based on Montgomery County property records. So I'll stop there.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm forgetting to put my finger up. I got to remember to do that. I'm going to mix things up since this is the final forum. I usually go to housing next, but actually let's go to environmental stewardship or sustainability, and we'll start with you, Roger. The city of Tacoma Park, of course, has a goal to reach net zero emissions, and we have a sustainability manager. We also have other environmental and environmental adjacent staff members and policies. How do you think Tacoma Park is doing in terms of its environmental policy? And as council member, are there other policies that you would pursue?
Thank you. I think that I offered a pretty strong analysis of our climate response strategy that the city produced 4 or 5 years ago, in which I had 2 critiques. One was that it primarily focused on building energy use and efficiency, which is one of the largest chunks of our carbon footprint. The other was that it did not set objectives. And I said at the outset, setting clear objectives is crucial so that you can measure how you are approaching the outcomes that you want to achieve. It's still not the case that we have those objectives in place. With buildings, I would support a city revolving fund to speed up the process of families and of buildings being able to make their structures more energy efficient first and foremost, and then ultimately shifting to electric away from gas. With transportation, I see great win-win possibilities where the issues we're talking about with cut-through traffic, if we work to resolve those and improve walkability, both in our existing neighborhoods and perhaps in new village-like neighborhoods that we develop, we will be taking cars off the road. And we will also be making possible a circulator shuttle that could get even more of us out of our cars. I believe that the most important thing with our housing, to be green in that sense, is to make sure that we maintain and grow our income diversity, because we can't have this an affluent enclave where people who are working class and lower income have to drive longer distances to get to this part of the region. There's a lot more we can do, and that we have some brilliant local groups, grassroots groups, who are working on food forests, who are working on stormwater protections that are not just in the public right of way, but involving upslope, downslope neighbors, tree canopy protection, community gardens. I was a member of the first pilot community garden, and just a host of other things. And I think our city doesn't have a big budget to make things happen in those realms, but can use its convening power and its communications power much better to bring together all these local experts so that we can learn from each other. One other idea that I have is in terms of protecting our streams, protecting our mitigating our flooding issues, helping our tree canopy is super important. And I would like to begin exploring whether people who have a registered mature tree can receive some kind of support for maintaining that tree as a stormwater asset.
Thank you. Lucy, what are your thoughts on our environmental policy, and any thoughts you may have on new initiatives?
So I do think we have a strong sustainability and climate action plan. And like a number of the plans we have in this city, we have great plans. And now we have fuller staff and some major logistical milestones checked off, like getting a new city manager. We have those in place. So now we can really start putting them into action. In terms of our community-wide ability to improve or reduce our carbon emissions, transportation is a huge piece. I believe the Sustainability Climate Action Plan notes that it's something like half of our carbon emissions come from transportation. So we need to recognize that housing density is in lockstep with sustainability. We need to provide more density in this community because we are right at the literal line of DC. We're right by a major city and a major employer. From my house in the corner of Ward 3, I can walk a mile in each direction and get to 2 different lines on our metro system. We obviously have the purple line coming in. Like, this community is served by tremendous public transportation infrastructure. We need to make space for more people to live here so that they can access that infrastructure. So as Roger said, they're not having to drive from even further out to get into town. So I want to be clear that our housing policy is very much a sustainability policy. I also want to note that with the tax credits the council is looking at, one of those tax credits is for significant improvements to multifamily buildings. And a very standard improvement that a lot of these buildings need is a rehaul of their mechanical system, of their HVAC. Those systems are getting more efficient. Buildings can look at different, whether they can do studies of the energy consumption, whether it's better by individual unit or by replacing it with electric. our city is putting dollars into housing that will also serve our overall efficiency. And lastly, I want to note that resilience is a critical piece, as we've all seen the devastation in Asheville. Like, we are all vulnerable to climate change. It's happening. I was excited to see that our city has made, I believe, this month Preparedness Month. I think the work we're doing around tree canopies and stormwater management are all critical things that when I see the city staff, the public works folks out, or the contractors that they hire out doing the cleanup of the stormwater catchments, like it's these, it looks like a small thing, but when down in Hell's Bottom, I see my yard flooding. Like, those catchment basins do a lot to mitigate that kind of extreme weather event, and they're only going to get worse. So I do think our city can continue to do more, but is really taking on both prongs of climate justice, the carbon emission and the resilience piece that's going to help protect our community.
Great, thank
Thank
you. And Matt?
Yeah, I think Lucy said it really well, that the best thing the city can do, and the actionable thing the city can do, is have additional housing near transit lines and near the new Purple Line. Be a partner with the county and state on encouraging people to live near transit and to take it. And the city can also do better on making it easier for folks to use other means of transportation. I'm a cyclist. Folks may have seen me riding around on my bike with 2 kids on the back. It's electric because I'm not that strong, but the city can do a lot more on bike lanes and improving sidewalks. In Ward 3, along Carroll Avenue, between the co-op and my store, the bike lanes were striped wrong when they repaved the road, and now there's a goofy 2 different lines for the bike lanes. That shouldn't happen. We should have protected bike lanes there. The sidewalks along Carroll Avenue are made of brick, and several of them have been damaged dating back to the earthquake we had in 2011 or 12, and we still haven't gone back and fixed those sidewalks so that folks can walk along there with a stroller, or if you have mobility issues, you're safe walking along that sidewalk and you don't have to get in the car. The other thing the city can do is stop encouraging people to drive everywhere, and that includes starting to charge for parking at the Junction Co-op. I know no one likes to pay for parking, but right now we're encouraging people to go and park for free from out of town to Tacoma Park. I don't think that's good on a climate basis. I don't think that's environmentally friendly. And I think the city ought to start charging parking at the Junction.
Thank you. Roger, any follow-up thoughts when it comes to the environment?
Yeah, I'm a bike commuter as well, and I bike about 5 or 6 miles each way into DC. And I think it's important to coordinate our network with the larger regional connections. So in our ward, we have the new Hampshire Avenue Bikeway underway. There are 3 tricky intersections in the plan still, and I want to work closely to make sure that those are safe for cyclists who are heading up onto Kansas Avenue in the district. I would like to say also that with respect to bike lanes, we have some real challenges on the top of the ridge at Carroll Avenue because there isn't much room to widen things, even though a bikeway is in the Montgomery County Master Bike Plan. I would also say that if we think about tree canopy, that's also important to have trees over all of our sidewalks throughout town, because as things get hotter, people don't go out and walk unless they have that much needed shade on so many hot days.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
I'm listening to you all, and I'm forgetting to put my finger up, so.
Okay.
And I apologize. Sometimes we have a clock up here that tells you, or a light that tells you, so I apologize that we don't have that tonight. Lucy, any other thoughts that you on the environment?
Yeah, I do just want to note, so Roger mentioned the new Ave bikeway that's going in. I wanted to flag that as an example of what Matt mentioned, the importance of partnering with different levels of government. It's an example of our city staff working hard to connect wards, to connect Ward 3 to the new public transit coming with the Purple Line. So the new Ave bikeway is going to provide a bikeable path, essentially the length of New Hampshire Avenue. Not all on New Hampshire Avenue. I think anyone who's driven down there or walked along that sidewalk knows you don't want to hop on a bike there. But they are providing a way to move down that route. And it was city staff working with working to get grants to provide the design to get us to 30% design completion that lets the community understand what the plan is. And the staff is actively working to pursue more money to bring that in. So I just want to applaud the staff for their work they're doing and recognize the value of these projects to really connect within our community and resource-wise connect beyond.
Thanks. Matt?
Yeah, I'd say the one other thing that I didn't mention and I should have, and maybe the key both to climate, transportation, and housing here is we're short a housing and community development lead at the city right now, and we need to hire someone who understands our needs and can get projects done. So that's going to be a very key thing. You know, there's a lot of big ideas we could try to tackle in Tacoma Park, but trying to get actionable items in the next 2 years of that you're electing one of us to, that's going to be one of the big ones.
Great, thanks. Any burning thoughts?
Parting
Doesn't have to be
thoughts?
burning, but
Oh, well, yeah, when you talk about, I'm sure we're going to get into housing and thinking about infill development. It's interesting to recognize that you don't have to have an completely open-ended approach to development to get to that density point that you're talking about, Lucy. A study that I read recently said that a community with about 10,000 people per square mile can support a circulator shuttle. And we are right now, if we added 3,000 people, or even if we added somewhere around that number and counted people on the other side of, say, New Hampshire Avenue, we would be in that position. So 21,000 on 2.1 square miles would be that threshold. And I also forgot to mention bus rapid transit is in the planning stage this year with Montgomery County for New Hampshire to connect the new Langley station with Fort Totten. So that's going to be a game changer.
great. Thank you very much. Lucy?
I think it sounds like we're ready to move on to housing, but
Yeah, I mean, yes,
not to prompt your question.
No.
whatever you want to talk about.
We're at housing.
Yeah.
So, Matt, we'll start with you. And in the previous forums, I've kind of opened up the the Cliff's notes on this strategic plan. I assume all three of you are familiar with. We're halfway through close to halfway through that plan, which was enacted in 2019. Essentially, the city has made a commitment to expanding housing while at the same time preserving affordable housing. In a nutshell, Matt, could you tell us your thoughts on, first of all, if you agree with the principles laid out in this plan, and how you see the city doing better at achieving its strategic plan when it comes to housing?
Sure. Yeah, and we're half a decade into our housing plan, and as far as I'm aware, there's 2 single-family homes that we've really built out of it. One of them down the street from me, and shout out to my new neighbors, who I'm very glad are there. What we need to do is take real action, and I'm an action-oriented person. I'm delighted that city staff has come up with proposals for tax credits to start renewing the affordable housing we have and maintaining that stock. I'm also supportive of building new housing stock in Tacoma Park. And again, a new HCD director who understands those needs and the council's priority on that are important. I was supportive of the Master Minor Plan Amendment, the MMPA. So was the unanimous, so was everyone else on Montgomery County Council and 6 of the members of the City Council. We need to make sure we have an Adventist campus that meets our needs for housing and allows new people to move to Tacoma Park. And I'm delighted that the MMPA also included some provisions that will allow us to put bike lanes on Maple Avenue. I think that's all good stuff. So I think the city's actually, the councils, and Lucy said this in her opening statement, the council and the mayor are headed in the right direction on housing issues. What's important is that we don't talk ourselves to death, and we don't try to make sure that when 95% of people agree, 5% of people get a veto projects. We're never going to get to a perfect project at the Washington Adventist campus, but we're going to have to work really hard to find a really good project. In terms of the next 2 years that this term would serve, I'm focused on 2 buildings where I think we can make real progress, and we can talk more about these if you want. But the McLaughlin School along Poplar Avenue is probably up for redevelopment, and it's very complicated where it's at, and I don't want to get into people's affairs, but there's probably an opportunity for the city to be a legitimate partner there in building multifamily housing. Additionally, the old commercial building that the city bought a few years ago along New Hampshire Avenue, where you may know there was a moped dealership there. It's white. It's about 6 stories tall. The city got $500,000 as a grant to buy that building from the Adventist Church. They sold it to a developer to build multifamily housing and retail on the first floor. And since then, as folks probably know, the commercial real estate market has been a disaster. I'm willing to go talk to that developer and try to find a way forward on that project. Those are 2 things where I think we can really make progress and show ourselves to be a place where you can spend money and you can invest money without having to die the death of 1,000 cuts.
Thank you. And Lucy, your thoughts on Tacoma Park achieving its housing goals?
So I want to be able to talk about 2 buckets. One is the relationship of affordable housing and more housing in that conversation. And the other is about our city staff and how we invest in that and the ways they support us achieving these goals. So first, I want to be clear that I support and I'm glad it is made clear in the housing policy plan the city has that we need more housing and we need affordable housing. I think there's a fear, and it's an understandable one, that if we have more housing, we will lose our affordable housing. But I believe the city has the ability to enact the policies, like the kind of incentives that the mayor is considering now, to try to head off that. Because if we can't, we have not changed our housing policy since I've moved here. I've been here for 11 years, and the price of housing has gone through the roof. When I moved here, the median home price was $450,000. Now it's $750,000. And that's if you can find one. So we definitively need more housing. Otherwise, the community is just going to increasingly become unaffordable. But we need to retain the affordable housing we have. And if we can provide more, absolutely. Like, I believe housing is a human right, and I want Tacoma Park to be part of making that a reality. That said, Tacoma Park currently has 8% of the affordable housing units in this county, even though we only make up 2% of the population of the county. So I want us to hold on to those affordable housing units, but I also want the county to act so that they are also providing more affordable housing. And they're starting to do that. The county has passed a rent control policy or a rent stabilization policy. So now we're no longer this island in Montgomery County with our own rent stabilization policy that gets, you know, there are narratives about it being this major obstacle. Well, it doesn't have to be an obstacle if we're not the only ones, and that's starting to change. So, you know, I want to be sure, and I think we are looking at ways to address both, and that both affordable and more can work together to really the kind of community that we want, that we're losing because we're not doing anything. I also want to note that there's been a ton of turnover in the Housing and Community Development Department. I, through the Grants Review Committee, the current committee I'm serving on, have worked with, I think, 4 or 5 different members who have been assigned person. And part of that was because the department was being pressured to have a grants position. This is a person who seeks grants and oversees the grants the city gives out. They were trying to force it into a part of someone's job, then into a half-time position, and it just didn't work. It didn't mean that it was not a good fit for staff. It was putting them in positions where they couldn't do their job well. We now have a full-time grants coordinator. She's amazing. But I think of that as a small example of, you know, if we are really prioritizing housing, I want to make sure we have a full staff, that we're paying our staff well, and housing and community development are a critical in that capacity.
Great, thank
you.
Roger, your thoughts on Tacoma Park's housing policy?
Sure. Just a quick correction. I don't believe the city bought that property on New Hampshire Avenue. I believe they had a $500,000 pass-through grant to that property owner. I hope that so far tonight I've begun to show closely I understand the details in our ward and in our city, and I think that close attention to details does differentiate me in terms of my thinking about our housing, our question, and the solutions for it. There's a simplistic argument being made that by adding more housing in Tacoma Park at any price point, that will automatically filter down, using the economic term, to produce more affordable housing. that argument makes sense on a national scale, and that's what the Harris administration, if they're elected, hopes to do. It makes sense on a regional scale, but it doesn't make sense on the local scale of a community where everybody's dying to live in Tacoma Park. So we need to have much firmer guardrails in terms of how we guide development to make sure not just that we have no net loss of affordable housing, which is what the MMPA says, but so that we have no displacement, which if you think about it is quite a different principle. I grew up in DC, and I've spent my whole life seeing all this development coming in DC, coming. It's beautiful to see all this new density, but I've seen gentrification like you wouldn't believe, and I've seen people driven out to Prince George's County and elsewhere and farther afield. So we have development at the edges, but it's not the kind of development that we're looking for yet. Our conditions are ripe, as I said, on New Hampshire Avenue, at the crossroads, at the hospital site, all vacant or underused land. We have infill opportunities like at the church property at Jackson and Elm in our ward, Jackson and Ethan Allen in our ward. Maple Avenue does not have to be the focus. Families have lived there for 30 or 40 years. There's a big risk of displacement. It's also sitting on top of Brashier's Run, which has cost this city so much money with this building and the library, that if you think about how a building can be constructed there, it's going to have a parking deck above ground, not below. It's also the farthest from Metro, Purple Line, and BRT. I've talked to residents who are opposed to new housing. I've not met those people. Nobody dressed like a bumblebee has opened the door for me. I've talked to people who are welcoming new development, but they want to see a nuanced approach that protects our values of diversity and sustainability and authentic connection.
Thank you very much. Matt, you get a chance to follow up with any
You see
further
what
comments?
I mean by the death of 1,000 cuts. If we're going to impose restrictions that don't lead to anything happening and not getting new housing, that's what we've done for 40 years. We've tried nothing and it hasn't worked. So trying new things to try to bring in new housing and being realistic about what can and can't be done is incredibly important. And it's important that we all talk about things in Tacoma Park, but at the end of the day, we have to take action. And so to suggest that there's a mythical person out there willing to come to town and build the exact perfect housing project within the perfect conditions is unrealistic. And so that's why I'm glad the council is going and hopefully going to pass these tax credits, because they'll set the rules of the road. And then, and we can talk about this more about how business works. I've gotten a business loan before. You need the rules of the road to be clear to go invest somewhere. And that's what these housing tax credits are going to do. And I'd love to hear if you guys are going to vote for would support those.
Great. Thank you. Lucy?
So I do support the housing tax credits. I think they need to work in conjunction with other policy. For instance, the county is considering redefining single-family zoning to include, basically to include duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, the kind of housing we have in Tacoma Park, but we're currently not allowed to build more of in single-family zoned areas. So this would, in places now where a small home that's run down gets bought by someone who can flip it and they max it out to be $1 million+ home, this would let the same person build a duplex or a multi-unit, more or less at the same scale. So I think seeing that from the county will be huge, paired with the tax credits we have. And I think the tax credits that are before us are really important because they are taking on specifically the need to protect our affordable housing units that are deed restricted. So we have a good portion of our affordable housing that is tied to deeds, but those have term limits. Those have lengths of time. They will expire. And so one of the tax credits is incentivizing a reinvestment in that affordable housing to try to make sure that there's enough money altogether that a building owner can retain those units when they expire.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've heard this phrase, it's been put out there that we haven't had any new housing, multifamily housing in 40 years. That begs a predicate. Why have we not had this? The most obvious answer is that we've had 40 years of incredible sprawl in this metro area with tons of public money being spent for things like the ICC and a lot cheaper land to build on. I think the pendulum has swung back and developers are interested in these inner suburbs now. again, to emphasize, we have to get the fiscal analysis to understand. I would not support the tax credit number 1 right now because it's not been made clear that's even an effective tipping point to get new development to happen. We're waiting on that fiscal analysis almost till the end of the month, it may be. We have to set targets for not only the number of new units we want, but also the type, the location, and the price points. And we ought to have a sunset so that we can pause and see, because this is actually effectively spending. Let's pause at a point and see where we're at.
Okay, thank you. You have a chance to come back one more time. So,
Okay.
Matt, any final thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. And this is our last minute, right?
This is our last minute. We'll stop you again.
Thank God.
Mhm.
This is the final countdown.
Is the music going to play? Okay. Look, this is again an example of, hey, you just heard, these tax credits might not give us exactly what we want. Okay, then let's go find the things that do. Until then, let's start trying. Let's try some things and see what we can do to bring projects here that fit within our community. I built the bookstore, and I hope that you think it's something that fits into our community and it's something new. That's my vision for any new development in Tacoma Park, and I'd stick to that. If you trust me at the bookstore as a guy who built something in Tacoma Park, that's where I'd take the future.
Great, thank you. Lucy, any final thoughts?
I would just reiterate that if we don't take action, that is an action in of itself, and it's an action that is supporting the trajectory of housing prices just going through the roof, that drives up our property taxes. It underlies so many things. So we need action if we're going to do something other than just continue to have our community become more for those of us who are already living here, let alone people we want to include in the future.
Great, thank you. And Roger, final thoughts?
At all costs, we need to avoid replicating the kind of residential segregation that we see when you have across the metro area. We're one of the most beautiful spots in terms of not having that. And at all costs, we need to protect that.
Great, thank you. Lucy and everybody take a deep breath. We're going to talk about the minor master plan amendment. Lucy, the minor master plan amendment process revealed or reminded us that the City of Tacoma Park does not act unilaterally. Can you provide your assessment of how the city handled that whole process on its end and any lessons learned from the minor master plan continuum?
So so yes, we do not operate alone. The minor master plan is a county policy, essentially. It was developed by our county planners. So all the more reason why we need a fully staffed housing and community development department so that we have the staff to liaise with county staff. We just need to make sure we're filling all those spots. I think the council on the whole did a very good job. They took a lot of time to listen. They did a lot of outreach, particularly along Maple Avenue. They, in the end supported the plan, and the plan is to allow for an update of zoning to align to current zoning norms, which include mixed use housing where there had previously just been a higher density housing allowed, that allows for the change in use of the Adventist site. I do think it obviously brought up some critical questions it's important for our community to talk about. I mean, I think I heard several times criticism that the plan stopped at the multifamily. It didn't touch the single family. So now I'm hoping that the single family zone neighborhoods are going to be touched by this other policy, by the attainable housing policy that I just described, where the county will redefine single family to include more density. I do think that starting point was strategic on the county to pick their battles. They knew they were coming at single family from a different angle. But it is worth noting that the plan, drew its line between multifamily and single family. And I think that reflects some power dynamics that are at play always in this community. I know that the racial equity came up a lot to housing with the minor master plan. And I heard Roger say that he wants to protect the diversity of our community, which I absolutely want to protect. But I think it's worth noting that we, though are quite diverse as a community, experience significant racial inequity. So when it comes to home ownership, or just residents period in Tacoma Park, our community are renters, homeowners, but 75% of the homeowners are white families. So if you're a white family in Tacoma Park, the home ownership rate is something like 89%. It's something like 13% for African American families. And then when, thinking about that in relation to income, the median income for a white family in Tacoma Park is $150,000. It's under a third of that for African American families. Now, this is a simplification. Obviously, families are multiracial. But going to sort of broad stroke census data, our community, though very diverse, has extremes. And so that's where I want us to be serious about our poverty alleviation programs, because that is a way for our city government to engage with resource distribution. And I think that's what we need in our government, is we need to trust our government to be an entity that we can pay our taxes to, and those taxes will help to go to make a more equitable community, because more equitable not only means better for people who are more marginalized, but means healthier, safer, a full community for everyone involved.
Thank you. Roger, same question. Did the city handle the minor master plan process well, give an assessment, and then were there any lessons learned from that process?
Well, I think the minor master plan started out as a laudable goal, which was to look at the vacant hospital site and specifically say, well, this is now zoned for R60, and how can we create a new village there on that site? I don't think the city realized what it was getting into when it allowed that plan to expand down the hill and across the creek to Maple and Lee Avenues. In updating the zoning for those areas, the planning board sought to and achieved such greater building heights that it now is profitable conceivably for us to tear down the buildings and replace them. I already talked about the floodplain issues, so we'll see what happens. But if you're going to allow that kind of new development, you have to have real safeguards in place, as I said, not just for no net loss of affordable housing, but for the actual families that have lived there 30 and 40 years. You have to figure out how to stage that development. I'm not saying that there's no room for new development on Maple. There's an excellent site, that big blank parking lot next to the Park Ritchie, a long slope of impervious surface. And that would be a wonderful place to build. Reaching out beyond, and Lucy, I appreciate you made the point, and there seems to be a correlation in the fact that we have affluent, much more white homeowners, and that the county didn't tiptoe into any of the adjacent single-family home areas. We can accelerate encouraging people to break up these now very large structures. If we can consider how to make it affordable for people to put a kitchen back in, a second kitchen, put a bathroom in, an egress window, or whatever it might be. If you think about the numbers, that's about $100,000. So I feel that we've only had a trickle of new ADUs. We have a lot of people I'm talking to who are at that stage in life where they'd like to break apart their house so that they can stay in it. And they simply need to be able to capitalize how to do that. So I think it was a mistake not to look more broadly and globally at how we create more housing. We may have lost, if we, with the objectives we're choosing, we have an opportunity cost that we don't have the ability to fund other things that could take some of these large envelope single family homes and allow them, in some cases, to turn to where they were 40 years ago, perhaps, or 50 years ago. I hope we get into taxes, because if you tell me that we have to expand the tax base to balance our budget, I'm going to ask you, why is our tax base expanded for so many years and we still don't have a balanced budget?
Thank you. We'll get to some other things. Matt?
Just to level set, the minor master plan is a county issue. The county voted on it. They had the real power on it, right? The vote at the city council level was a resolution, effectively a letter to the county on what we thought, right? The county controls zoning in Tacoma Park. Tacoma Park doesn't control zoning. Lots of folks who don't realize it Tacoma Park doesn't control zoning land use. It's a county responsibility. So, thank you. May I? Okay. So the county is the ones that really have the leverage here on zoning. I'm not focused on what the county's up to. I'm running for city council, right? I'm focused on the 2 projects I mentioned earlier around housing that I think are realistic in the next 2 years to make real progress on, rather than fighting out old fights about the MMPA. But if we want to talk about the MMPA, universal vote at the county council to support it. 6 of the 7 members at the city council level supported it. The nonprofits that own most of the buildings along Maple Avenue were supportive of it. So either all of those people were fooled or are shills for big money developers, or, and maybe that's the case, maybe everyone is against you, or maybe it was a pretty reasonable plan that had lots of public outreach with hundreds of interviews canvassing along Maple Avenue of those residents and all kinds of public meetings. We could have talked about it longer. We talk about stuff a lot in Tacoma Park. What we needed to do was get to a place where we actually take action, and so far the sky has not fallen.
Great, thank you. And you get a chance, Lucy, if you have any other thoughts on the minor master plan amendment or related.
Yeah, I do just want to flag the displacement concern. I mean, it's absolutely a valid concern and one the city needs to be engaged in. I know that's going to become a major issue with the Purple Line coming in. And I think that's an area where the city can be looking beyond our immediate community to the experts outside of it. Specifically at University of Maryland, there's a professor who's also on the board of an organization that's working with local businesses along the Purple Line. And she's bringing her academic expertise and her planning expertise to support businesses and their expertise being on the ground and living through the area of the Purple Line. So we've got, you know, the ideas and the concern for displacement, whether it's the businesses suffering the Purple Line, residents in these buildings. I think it's important to flag that that's a concern that the city needs to pay attention to, and it also needs to pay attention to growth, or we're going to face displacement far greater than what we're talking about in the immediate.
Great, thank you. And Roger, any further thoughts on the minor master plan amendment or similar?
I mean, I'm running for this to do this hard work because I believe the council has to provide the oversight to protect our community's values as we creatively confront change. I think that the planning board isn't in the position to provide the oversight that we're responsible for. And when I look at the MMPA, I'm thinking about how it has by right opportunities for new construction, but it only has aspirational language, wishes, best intentions about some of the things that we need to be looking out for. And I'm not trying to block development. I'm just saying it is our job to care for these 2.1 square miles. We've got a creek, and we have to think about how our stormwater program is going to protect that creek in light of new development. We've got needs for transport, 0.8 of a mile in either direction to get to Purple Line and Metro. We've got schools, and the last thing is you want to build a greenway, a beautiful greenway. Don't make it a kit of parts, as they call for it, and see if it happens piecemeal. Figure out how to make the whole thing happen. Yeah.
Thank you. Any final thoughts?
Yeah,
Matt?
look, I don't want to fight about stuff has already been settled. The MMPA's law. Let's move forward and action on places that we can really do things. I don't have time in my life to relitigate every issue that Tacoma Park's ever faced. What I want to do is really be action oriented, tackle those 2 projects I mentioned earlier, and get to a place where we actually have some points on the board in actually having new residents in town and having new housing that's multifamily.
Okay, thank you. Lucy?
I do, I'm concerned about the offhand criticism of plans that, staff and experts, planners are experts in their field. They obviously need community input, but that's a big chunk of what they do. I think our job as work together to support the plans that our staff put together, to work with the community to make sure that those ideas are getting put in there. I want city council to be cheerleaders for all of those that are playing a part in this conversation, and not to be an entity that is there to pick apart the choice in phrasing or the balance of language, when at the end of the day our governments are tied by, you know, the amount of money we're willing to put into it. You know, they're doing the best with what they have, and I think, you know, if we're unhappy with, say, the ways that we can show up for affordable housing, I think we need to ask about how much we're willing to put in. Like, you can't have it both ways. You can't have fewer taxes and have more government control over things. So I really want to make sure our council is acting in a supportive manner for everyone in the conversation.
Thank you. I lost track of where who we're starting with. Lucy, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, for the next question?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know how many questions in
You-
we are, but
Okay.
we can start
You
any.
can go next.
You get one more.
It might have been me you started with last.
I start with you last.
Yeah, thanks.
So Lucy, let's
Great,
move this way. Might as well talk about taxes or talk about city services the way I've been coming at it. But, you know, the budget is a document that assesses income to the city, revenue to the city, and then payments for services, obviously. So provide your assessment of where the city is in terms of reaching that balance between city services. The city does a lot, and raising adequate revenue to maintain those services.
So our budget is a reflection of our values, and our budget has we've had these ebbs and flows of unusual circumstances, namely of COVID relief dollars coming in, and some capital projects. But aside from that, our budget and how we've approached it hasn't changed for the last at least 12 years. That's about as far back as I was able to somewhat easily find records and breakdowns. It's grown essentially proportionately with inflation, and every year we've spent a third of our budget on the police department, roughly 20% on parks, everything else fills in the remainder. So that's recreation, housing and community development, the operations of the city. And I think it's important every time we talk about our budget to think about, is this a reflection of our values? And I trust our government. I want to believe in our government. I want us to put money into our government. We are doing that because our housing prices are going through the roof, whether we like it or not. So I do think more housing long-term is going to help, but it's not going to be a quick fix. But I want to make sure when we talk about the budget, the starting point is not that we're going to just cut the programs that were enhanced during the COVID relief influx. So those are things like the emergency rental assistance, the food security dollars. Through my service with the grants review committee, we were essentially told that the grant we oversee and the other grant programs were, it was in question whether they were funding once the COVID dollars end. Those need to be spent at the end of the year. Problems that we're trying to address have not gone away, and I truly believe it is our city's responsibility to engage with policy that will improve the lives for those most vulnerable in our community. That involves, a shifting priorities. That's what I want to see.
I'm sorry, before we go on, please all not interrupt folks while they're talking. I thought it was pretty rude to interrupt Lucy just now.
When it's factually
Yeah, okay.
well,
We're all volunteers. I understand. I'd love to talk to you afterwards if you'd like. But really, Roger's friends from Community Vision keep interrupting us both. It's really not the forum for that
But
sort of thing.
we'll kind of look at this as if we're at home and it's a screen. You can
Yeah.
talk to the screen, but live.
None of my supporters are going to interrupt
Yeah.
anybody tonight. I'd encourage everyone else to probably maybe stick to that rule.
Right.
You don't have to, you do.
Hey, shh.
All right.
Okay. Again, I just don't think that's how I want to run things. Look, the city's been on this path of negative politics and of trying to go after one another and make everything a binary. I don't understand why. I don't know. I know folks are mad about old battles here, but everyone here cares about our community and is doing our best to try to get there. And I don't appreciate the suggestion that any of the three of us are. That's all I'd say to start.
All right. Well, I'm going to go over to Roger, then we'll go over to you. Roger, your thoughts on the city budget, how we're doing in terms of balancing city services against revenues.
Okay. in 2 minutes. Let's
Yeah, to
balance
ask
this
a,
budget.
yeah.
So we have a $1.2 million, what's called a structural deficit. That means that the way we're operating on an annual basis is predicated upon spending 1.2 million more than we have. We haven't had to address that for the last few years because we had American Rescue Plan Act monies to kind of paper over that gap. We're running out of that option now, and I'm very glad that the new city manager has been transparent about that issue. We have had our property tax receipts rise faster than inflation at least 10 of the last 12 years. And we've also seen our staff size increase faster than our population over that same period. Now, are we adding new programs that are necessary? Have like a sustainability coordinator? Yes, arguably yes. But to be progressive, you also have to be fiscally wise. So if we're adding something here as a new priority, what is our thought? There are trade-offs. If we simply raise taxes, at some point we are pushing people out who can't afford those taxes anymore and are on fixed incomes. There are lots of ways. How much time do I have left?
You have,
Fix the budget. Great. Lots to begin to think about the budget. I trained in municipal public administration. That was my master's degree, and I worked for the DC government, and I worked for the city of Durham, North Carolina. I actually love reading budgets. Well, yeah, honestly. I stick with it. It makes all the different funds. So I participated on several occasions past years on closing the budget. These are my thoughts. Number one, I'm so thankful that our current council member, Randy Gibson, and the city manager, Rob DeSpirito, has agreed that working on getting new performance metrics in place for the time so that 2 years from now, we'll be able to ask how well it's working and how we want to refine it and restructure it if not. In terms of finding more immediate cuts for fiscal year coming up, I've got several ideas. One is to look at extending the schedule for resurfacing of streets, which has been the same since 1980, even though we have fewer freeze-thaw days. And I've seen a lot of streets resurfaced that didn't seem to need it. Extending the schedule for replacing our vehicles. Vehicles last a lot longer now than they used to. I don't want to hurt our workers, our frontline workers. I've been alongside them.
Okay,
I want to look at things like detectives.
We'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Roger.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Matt?
Thanks. Yeah, and I spend every day a little while. There's two things I'm in charge of at the bookstore. It's when the plumbing goes bad and the accounting. And so every day I look at a budget and I see money coming in and I see money going out. And I have the fiscal skills to do those things every day as a business person. The issue we face as a city is, and all of those ideas here are probably valid. The issues we face are more structural. We've become deeply dependent as a city on single-family housing to cover most of our tax base. And that's why it's so important that we diversify that tax base with new housing, new retail, and new commercial. On taxes, I'm so sympathetic to folks having to pay more. I am a guy that pays taxes at my house, where my escrow payment is now higher than any other part of the payment for my mortgage. I also pay taxes at the bookstore. I pay the property taxes and the stormwater runoff there. I pay taxes on every sale we make at the bookstore of 6% to Montgomery County. So sympathetic to folks' concerns around taxes. What I think is really important is that in Tacoma Park, those taxes pay for really important programs. They pay for the rec center and for places that kids can go to be safe in our community. They pay for a police force that I think meets our values and a police chief that does so. And they pay for the library that I think is going to be a great meeting place for my son and daughter and as they leave Tacoma Park Elementary in Piney Branch. So we have to get it right, and we have to grow the pie. Otherwise, we're going to have to cut those really important services that serve some of the folks that really need them in our community.
Thank you. Any further thoughts, Lucy?
Yeah, I think the Matt makes a good point about the commercial piece of development. Currently, Ward 6 is essentially our money engine. They have commercials that is a huge portion of taxes, and we need to support policies that will help to expand that down New Hampshire Avenue. You know, there's a range of reasons why having New Hampshire Avenue have more housing or have housing on it, have mixed use. It would be a lovely place to walk if it was a pleasant place to walk. I live 2 blocks away from it. Now I avoid it because it's walking on the sidewalk feels like you're going to hit by a truck. I mean, it's unpleasant. But, you know, aside from all the nice things and the things we would want, having more commercial space will also take the pressure off of Ward 6 essentially, and expand that kind of tax base more equitably throughout our community. And it's a long-term project, so I think I want to be sure that as we're looking at the short term, we're again coming back to our values and not just cutting out the programs that feel the easiest because they impact the most vulnerable. But I do think long-term that commercial piece is key.
Great, thank you. Roger?
Yeah, I just do really want to disentangle budget discipline from expanding the tax base. Because as I said very quickly earlier, it really is true that the value of our cumulative assessments has gone up rapidly. We're all aware of that. And yet, with that much expanded tax base, we've not seen the city move towards a balanced budget at all. It's moved in the opposite direction. So yes, a new tax base is good for a lot of green reasons and a lot of justice reasons, but that's not going to make any difference for balancing our budget unless we get that strong oversight and fiscal discipline. I want to mention one other thing, which is that, and I've been gently raising this question, it's almost 30 years ago now that the county united the 2 sides of the city united as one county under Montgomery County. We had to have a full range of services before that for parity. The question is now, why are we still providing every single component of our services when we all pay county taxes?
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry that 1 minute goes fast. Let's see. Did we go all the way through twice?
Sure.
I think so. Yeah.
I've lost track.
Yeah, I've lost track too. It's late. Any final thoughts?
How about in the interest of all of our time, I take a
Yeah.
pass?
Okay. Now, why don't we do a speed?
Can I just real quick?
Go for it.
Cede my time to Lucy.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make sure that when we're talking about living within our means and fiscal discipline, that we're not passing that on to the way we pay and treat our staff. We have tremendous staff. We have a lot of essential workers. And by doing the idea to do more with less is essentially passing that on to them. So yes, we need to be fiscally responsible, but I want to make sure that again, we're thinking about what the impact is of that fiscal responsibility. Are we actually being responsible for all those that we're impacting?
Okay, we're just gonna.
Yep, now we're good.
Stop
Thank
it.
you very much. Phrase.
I want to do a little speed round because we're short on time, and so I want to ask one question before we get to the closing statement, and it has to do with a topic that I think all 3 of you have brought up, which is business and commercial development. And Ward 3 is ranges from small retail and restaurant businesses to businesses and commercial development along a state highway. Is it in the what would you suggest that the city do to spur greater retail business and commercial development in the next council? I'll start with you, Matt.
Yeah, I'd get back to we need more retail space. It took us a year to find a place for the bookstore. I could have opened a year earlier and been paying taxes more and selling folks books that they like a year earlier. We also need to make sure we have a housing and community development person that really understands the city's needs. Safe streets are a key part of my business. Having a place where people can walk to the bookstore from around the corner when they're at the farmer's market and feel safe and feel like they're in a place where walking and biking is a good idea, brings them into my business and others, and and coming along. You know, we're really in the middle of a small business renaissance in Tacoma Park, and it's mostly mom and pop shops like ours. You know, we're now the restaurant capital of DC, and I'm really proud of all that hard work. We have to work really hard to maintain it. The city was incredibly generous through the economic development branch to give us $10,000 towards buying bookshelves to just get ourselves off the ground. The city's got a really good program right now on facade improvements that I think will help some of the older buildings get nicer. Things like that are great. I think some of that money is going to run out soon. Ultimately, the key is not to balance the budget on the backs of businesses and to encourage everybody to come out and be supportive of our local businesses. I should say thank you to everyone for doing so at our store.
Great, thank you. Lucy, spurring business and commercial growth.
Yeah, I mean, I think the commercial growth and the housing growth are interlocked. I mean, you can see that just visually with the kinds of growth we have had near Tacoma Park. Think about the construction that's gone on near the metro, where it's the classic mixed use. You have apartments above, retail below. That's a formula that lets you build in an audience. And I think, you know, the city has worked hard. I think the city's actually been working for like 2 decades to try to get that kind of thing along New Hampshire Avenue. It's not something we're going to be able to do alone. You know, I think having the staff refocus with partnerships with the county across jurisdictions with Prince George's County. I mean, it needs to be a group effort to find, and I mean, I think, and it's working with developers, talking to developers to understand what is it that are the obstacles now, so that we can help to remove some of those. But do so, yeah, I mean, again, it's like these things are all mutually beneficial. They all mutually form each other. So the kinds of housings we'd be having about the kinds of conversations we'd be having about housing are going to be the same kinds of conversations we need to be having about commercial growth. You know, we need to make these viable projects, and also, you know, absolutely keep an eye on safeguards that we need. We don't want to safeguards to get in the way of improvement, you know, especially along Avenue, where right now there's just a huge amount of vacancy. It's such a missed opportunity. It's so close to the metro. I would love a more walkable, livable space a few blocks from my house. I know I'm not the only one. So I think those two things, housing and commercial, go in lockstep.
Great, thank you. And Roger?
Well, yeah, since we're talking about New Hampshire Avenue, I want to give a shout out to Dire Coffee and give them a shot. Great Ethiopian coffee. I sat down there for a long coffee with Mayor Searcy a couple of weekends ago, and we shared a lot of our common values as people who live near New Hampshire Avenue. I've had a great sit down with Rob DeSpirit, our city manager, who, coming from Rockville, understands that having a broader commercial tax base cushions you against tough times. In terms of retail development, and let's stay focused on New Hampshire Avenue because that's in our ward, and it's less built out than Old Town in our ward. That's an area where I know the business owners by name and sometimes the property owners by name. And they are hardworking people who are looking to actually be part of the new development. The city has not worked with them. Planning, housing and economic development people have not worked with them. They've not been aware of grants that are available. The police have not protected them. That's something I hear uniformly down the line. The city has not looked to make that area more beautiful and has had dumping for years along Sligo Mill Overlook, Sligo Mill conservation area. In our neighborhood, I think in beautifying, providing good protection, and linking New Hampshire Avenue with the neighborhoods that adjoin it is going to be the way to turn it into a walkable and like you're asking for, Lucy. And just to give one example, with Pinecrest, when a 2-story building was proposed for a currently vacant site, we advocated to make sure that the site plan would include a sidewalk that connected through from the top of Orchard to New Hampshire so that those linkages would happen. And I think a lovely thing to do would be to preserve one of the grassy parcels right there at the top of Orchard so that there's a new village on New Hampshire that links to the community garden and the playground down the hill. It's those little things that I think can make a big difference. Also, having a festival space somewhere in town where we can dance together, where we can have music together and not just have to use the VFW. And finally, at the hospital site, getting a grocery store in there so that people in the middle of town can walk to get their full range of groceries. Those are the kinds of things I think also be great catalysts for new retail and commercial by making people enjoy these new areas.
Thank you. And I'm sure we have a lot more we could talk about in terms of ideas, but my iPad keeps telling me that it's time for me to go to sleep. So Lucy, would you give us go first in terms of closing statement?
Sure. So I'm going to focus my closing statement on thanks and appreciation. I want to thank my family who have supported this effort, my neighbors and my immediate community, not just for their support now, but for their support that has made raising a family, having small children during COVID lockdown and the chaos that continues even without it. My family moved to Tacoma Park 11 years ago and moved to a tiny house that my husband and I still love, but we outgrew quite quickly by the time we had our second kid. And we stewed with the idea of like, how do we afford a way to stay in the area? And got lucky that one of those, essentially median price range houses came on the market, and we were able to move a block away without having to deal with the renovation. I tell that kind of random story to just emphasize that the ability to stay within this community for me was tremendous. For my family has been tremendous. I'm incredibly grateful for the neighbors who we have gotten to know over the years and we didn't have to say goodbye to. So I do want to acknowledge that that displacement fear is real. If we don't do something, there will be more displacement. That's not. And I do also acknowledge and appreciate the nature of this community. I think there is a way that things can become very, very divisive here. But at the end of the day, this is a place where I arrived, wanting more community than I was finding in the neighborhood we lived in DC, and found it. And we found layers. We found it in our park community, in our kids community, with the daycare, with our immediate street, and then also with the city. By engaging with city committees, by the city being a structure that has that kind of engagement at the ready. I've learned a tremendous amount. So both about the people that make up the community, but also the people that make up our city governance. And I'm tremendously grateful for the opportunity that confluence has created for me personally. And I truly hope that it's something, and I see in others, I see that kind of opportunity arises for many people here. And that's something I really treasure and hope to see continue in this place. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lucy. And Matt?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to Lucy and Roger for doing this tonight, and to you, Eric. When Megan and I, my wife, were starting to think about where we wanted to raise our family, we sat down and we made a list of the things that were really important to us. We wanted somewhere where we could walk and bike comfortably to restaurants and shops, somewhere that had good schools, somewhere with a real sense of community. We also wanted to be close to a bookstore, and I fixed that problem. So, we especially wanted a place where our kids could grow up around other kids that weren't exactly like them. We wanted our kids to be around kids that spoke different languages, had different skin colors, and lived in different types of buildings and had different economic backgrounds. And that's why it was so easy for us to pick Tacoma Park. It checked all of those boxes. And a lot of that is due to some really good decisions the city's made over the last 100 years. A lot of it is due to luck, and it's better to be lucky than good. I want to make sure that we continue that path of a place where people can come of different economic backgrounds and there's housing options for all of them. I want to make sure we're a place that's welcoming. I hope when folks go to the bookstore, they get a sense of how important that is to us, that somebody looks you in the eye and says, "Hi, how are you? We really care about you." I'm doing all this out of that same community building work, and I hope folks will take me at my word when I say the new things I want to bring are similar to what I've brought at the bookstore that are new. It's scary to do change, and it was really hard to bring the bookstore to Tacoma Park. I still have some shakes in me thinking about some of the things we had to go through, but I will work hard to continue that vision elsewhere in the city, and I hope to have you vote.
Thank you. And Roger?
Thanks again to you, Lucy, and you, Matt, to Eric, to our communication staff, to those watching, those that are here. I don't think I mentioned tonight too much that I'm a high school teacher, and my wife and I are both high school teachers. And I was taking the trash out this evening, and I was thinking about how the real interactions that matter in our community are at places like a bookstore, or a playground, or at a bus stop, or on a sidewalk, at a dog park. And it's so great to be in person and face to face with people in this setting, because I think that Meta and Google have run the table sometimes on our community interaction. And once we're real with each other and present to each other, I think great things happen. As a teacher, I teach literature and ecology, and I believe stories change communities, and communities are the ones that are changing the world right now. We have these two long-standing deficits: racial and economic injustice and ecological destruction. And I'm running because I believe that I possess the knowledge, the experience, and the skills, and the temperament to help our ward and our council meet these challenges locally better than we ever have before. It comes down to love. With love, there's no shortcuts, no skipping steps. You have to pay attention. You're in a relationship, and you have to stay in it by working to get everything right and keep doing the loving thing. And at our council, the loving thing is that oversight, that setting objectives, and that follow through that builds trust. So I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we can do one last round just to tell me what your websites are, presuming that you have a website or other way to contact them at.
Yeah, it's mattbormet.com, BORMET, MATTBORMET.com, and I'm Matt at mattbormet.com. My cell phone's on there. My email's on there. I'm at the bookstore every Wednesday, 9:30 to 12:30 p.m. Would love to talk to folks who want to stop by there. There are days I'm there at 12:30 a.m., but not every day.
Yeah, and I'm on a website, Instagram, and my email are all Lucy4Tacoma, the number 4. So again, Lucy, the number 4, Tacoma. So it's @.com, on Instagram at that same handle, and then that's also my Gmail. So please reach out.
I'm at rogerforward3.org, or you can remember it, rogerforward3.org. And you can also email me at rogerforward3@gmail.com. And I'm also on Facebook, and get on there, and I got some more signs if you want one.
All right. Well, thank you all for participating, and thanks for our audience. Just one final word, all about me again. I raised 2 girls in Tacoma Park, and they probably got tired of me hearing me tell them how lucky they were to grow up in a hometown. But this is a hometown, and the spirit of candidates for office really reflect that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.